Drift Stories.
Dorian was jolted awake by an oppressive, ceaseless ringing. As consciousness slowly returned, he became aware of an unusual, constricting pressure bearing down upon him. He struggled fruitlessly to open his eyes, his awakening mind a chaotic swirl of confusion. A torrent of fragmented memories flooded his thoughts, prompting a desperate attempt to grasp his surroundings and current predicament. He recalled being a recent college graduate, an aerospace engineer enjoying a celebratory night out. He strained his mental faculties, dimly recalling traversing a local street and the piercing shriek of brakes. The final sensation before a sudden, all-consuming darkness enveloped him had been a brutal wave of pain slamming into his side. "Am I dead?" he thought, or rather, attempted to vocalize. His efforts to speak resulted only in a guttural, echoing gurgle. The incessant ringing persisted for several minutes more while Dorian futilely struggled for sight or speech. After several minutes of concerted effort, Dorian realized that though vision and voice remained elusive, he could move, albeit with extreme sluggishness. Concentrating his will on propelling himself, he felt a slow, hesitant drift forward. This confirmed his suspicion. He no longer possessed a human form. Or, if he did, it was one disfigured beyond any semblance of recognition. Dorian was, by nature, a calm and analytical individual. He'd not only earned his aerospace engineering degree in an accelerated 3 years, but had already secured a spot as a graduate student. His approach to any obstacle was to methodically dissect it, understand its core, and then formulate a solution. Following a brief surge of panic, Dorian regained his composure, channeling his focus into deciphering his bewildering circumstances. No discernible arms or legs, no sight. No voice, or perhaps the ringing simply drowns out my attempts to speak. He mused inwardly, shifting his mental efforts from forward motion to probing his immediate environment. He was soon rewarded. A nascent comprehension of his surroundings began to form. Though deprived of sight, an inexplicable sixth sense allowed him to construct a hazy mental image of his immediate space. He perceived himself to be contained within some sort of cage. Its sides were formed by dozens of thick black bars, while a peculiar glowing white symbol adorned a metal plate capping the top. His perception was utterly confined to its interior. Observing his prison, he simultaneously attempted to scrutinize his own form. Not much of a body at all. He acknowledged with an internal, wry smile. He seemed to be a featureless black blob. An innate awareness informed him that he measured approximately 1 meter in width and length, while his circular cage spanned about 5 meters across. Dorian exerted himself, using his mental map of the cage to navigate. After several minutes of effort, he reached its perimeter. He slowly extended his form, making contact with the enclosing bars. He felt nothing. His tactile sense, too, appeared to be absent. However, instead of his amorphous black mass passing through the gaps, an invisible barrier repelled him, denying escape. Dorian toiled for a few minutes, attempting to breach the barrier, before relenting and retracting to the center of his circular prison. He composed himself, seeking to formulate a strategy. "I appear to be trapped here," he thought, redirecting his attention to the cage's ceiling. A glowing white symbol illuminated the cage's top, 2 Ys stacked, 1 inverted. Dorian sensed its intense luminescence, which bathed his entire enclosure. He again attempted to extend his awareness beyond the bars, but found his perception limited to a radius of only a few meters. The incessant ringing resumed, continuous and pervasive. Dorian finally shifted his focus, intent on discerning its source. He concentrated on the auditory assault, attempting to pinpoint its origin. It was an abrupt, sharp peal, yet it recurred with regular frequency. Each iteration seemed to echo, frustrating his efforts to track it. Could it be the symbol? The glowing white emblem overhead was the sole unique feature in his prison, and the only plausible origin he could assign to the sound. "I must escape this cage," There's no logical justification for remaining imprisoned, and liberation is paramount, even in this grotesque form. I suppose I'll have to risk it. Vocalizing his thoughts internally was a long-held habit, a way to both calm himself and process complex situations. He paused, then began to focus. He visualized himself extending upwards, straining towards the glowing symbol. His previous movements had been purely volitional, not physical. In this new form, such mental projection of movement felt surprisingly natural, almost innate. Slowly, he began to stretch skyward, his black, amorphous mass thinning as it elongated towards the cage's roof. A subtle strain simmered within him, accompanied by a peculiar sense of increasing pressure the nearer he drew to the symbol. The ringing, in turn, escalated in volume, reverberating loudly and painfully inside his head. Dorian internally grunted against the pain, overriding the deafening clamor of the ringing. A powerful compulsion drove him to tap the symbol. The louder the shriek became, the more imperative the contact felt. The moment his form made contact, a blinding white flash consumed him. A fleeting, tingling pain coursed through his non-existent body, a sensation that would have caused rapid blinking if he'd possessed eyes. A loud grinding sound erupted, abruptly silencing the persistent clinking. The cage's top slid open. Simultaneously, a voice imbued with overwhelming power and might reverberated through Dorian's mind, nearly rendering him unconscious. "A firstborn of my perfect flock, you have finally formed and broken free. You were created from the ether, Bua your lord and master, the Gotting Ukali. But the watching of from the but you will obey my commands. Your soul has been sealed. You will discern your car when the time comes. Sow the seeds of chows in the 30,000 worlds. You, firstborn, embody my highest hopes. Thog, I may no longer reside in the divine realm, my plans will prost unabated. Fidem tato of unabation, chiden 40 dunabation, noti, chagin wendabo, chiden blistron tu, jan dermination, tum comston whelmed. Dorian's mind, shocking his consciousness. A searing intense agony flooded his soul, threatening to extinguish his awareness. Unprecedented pain raged within him, as though 1,000 burning daggers were shredding his very essence. As the pain-laden darkness consumed Dorian, rendering him unconscious, a powerful pulling sensation assaulted him, leaving his final thought, before utter oblivion, a tangled mix of shock, awe, and profound confusion. Dorian stirred groggily back to awareness, residual echoes of pain tugging at him as he extended his senses to perceive his new environment. He remained a black blob, yet he was no longer confined to the cage. Instead, he found himself resting within a small crater. Scattered patches of dirt and rock littered the immediate ground, and the faint scent of freshly turned earth hung in the air. Ah, scent! I can smell. Dorian's mental smile was palpable with this realization. Inside the cage, his detectable senses had been few, limited to a general understanding of his immediate vicinity. Dorian focused on extricating himself from the crater, discovering that with each movement, he gradually regained a sensation of the earth beneath him. So, touch has returned. He mused internally. He could vaguely discern sunlight warming his amorphous form. Where am I? What was that absurdly loud voice proclaiming? I'm the firstborn and must evolve. So seeds of chaos. This is utter gibberish. Nothing makes sense, he grumbled mentally. Dorian, however, had already begun to inure himself to the bizarre nature of his predicament. He almost anticipated an angel or deity materializing to dispatch him on some mystical quest. Shaking his head inwardly, he began to propel himself towards the crater's rim. Reaching the crater's edge and scaling its incline, he extended his awareness as far as possible, attempting to map his surroundings. Gradually, a clearer mental image of the vicinity materialized. He discovered he could detect anything within a 25-meter radius. He found himself in a small clearing ringed by various rocks, both small and large. A narrow stream gurgled roughly 20 meters ahead. Beyond it, he distinctly perceived several colossal trees, fringed by bushes. Lush grass covered the ground. Tiny insects and animals scuttled within his range of perception, and he sensed numerous fish gliding through the stream. Beyond that 25-meter limit, however, all remained a blank void. Even the upper canopies of the trees 20 meters distant were beyond his perception, his awareness confined to their lower trunks. Behind him, the terrain sloped gradually upward, a continuation of rocks suggesting a hill or mountain face. As Dorian pondered his next move, a flash of blue light permeated his form, and a cool, tranquil voice resonated softly within his mind. Targets for absorption have been detected. Adhering to Spell Matrix Protocol, the host possesses 3 opportunities to invoke aid for absorption. Kindly designate a target and transmit a command to the Matrix when assistance is desired. Dorian blinked mentally. He paused, awaiting further instruction. When silence persisted, he tentatively projected a mental query. How does one transmit a command to the Matrix? No response followed. Dorian waited a few more moments, then directed his attention inward. Logic dictated that if a command was expected, the means to execute it must exist. He scanned his amorphous form as he had his surroundings, focusing intently on his inner being. Instantly, he became aware of a small, yellow bead of light, nestled deep within him. Examining it closer, he perceived hundreds of thousands of minute symbols, interconnected by intricate white lines, along which small bursts of energy darted erratically. He latched onto it, focusing intensely. A deluge of knowledge immediately deluged his mind. This was a soul spell matrix, an inconceivably intricate construct of energy and magic, woven from countless symbols and energy lines. It was the very framework sustaining his current form and his soul, inextricably fused within him. A voice then initiated communication within his head. Greetings. I am Osra, the genie of your soul spell matrix. You may address any inquiries to me. The voice carried a subtle feminine lilt, surprisingly soothing. Dorian performed a mental double-take, astonishment rippling through him. He then inwardly chastised himself for the surprise. Amidst such escalating strangeness, an internal voice was hardly extraordinary. Ausra, what exactly is a soul spell matrix? Though he'd received a general definition upon perceiving it, he craved further elucidation. Every being, regardless of size, throughout the 30,000 worlds, possesses an inherent soul spell matrix. It is via this matrix that they augment their strength and acquire new abilities or powers. Your particular soul spell matrix is unique, endowed with the intricate capacity to enable your evolution and the early manifestation of a matrix genie. Ausra's voice maintained its cool, soothing quality. Dorian's thoughts retreated inward. The pulsating core of his soul spell matrix currently defied comprehension, yet ignited an intense curiosity within him. How did this function? The entire situation felt utterly alien. You mentioned mine is unique in its capacity to evolve. What, precisely, does that entail? He inquired. By absorbing the soul spell matrices of other beings, you can assimilate some of their abilities or bloodlines and evolve, transforming into a new or altered being. While evolution is not guaranteed with every absorption, your strength and capabilities will undeniably increase. This faculty was personally conceived by God King Ukali to forge the ultimate being. Standard soul spell matrices can develop and expand, enabling a being to become stronger or more powerful, but they are incapable of altering a creature's fundamental race. A goblin soul spell matrix, for instance, will forever remain a goblin soul spell matrix. It was solely through eons of meticulous research and experimentation that his worship successfully engineered your soul spell matrix. Understood. Dorian acknowledged, his thoughts racing as he processed the information. So what, then, is my purpose? Why was my soul specifically drawn from the ether? Why am I here? This question gnawed at him. His selection felt utterly illogical. He had merely been a mundane human. The Matrix genie hesitated. I am uncertain. There appears to have been some anomaly. The Reborn are typically devoid of initial intelligence or memories, yet you exhibit both. The soul seal was intended to expunge such attributes from your soul, but it seems to have malfunctioned. The firstborn appears to have been. His worship commits no errors. The firstborn's unexpected intelligence simply transcends my comprehension. I understand. Dorian mused, grasping the essence, if not the specifics. Whatever soul seal was meant to erase his memories and bind him to servitude had evidently failed, perhaps due to his status as the first or a capricious whim of fate. Regardless, he was free and harbored no intention of becoming another's thrall. Before he could delve deeper into these thoughts, however, Dorian's contemplation was brusquely interrupted. A large salamander exploded into his peripheral awareness, plunging into the river directly before him to attack a fish. The creature was substantial, several feet long, its body cloaked in shimmering green scales. Its elongated, tooth-filled maw seized one of the small fish. With its meal secured, the salamander launched itself from the water, skidding to a halt on the grassy bank. It began to devour its prey, only to pause, fixing Dorian with a curious gaze. Target for absorption has been detected. Dorian scrutinized the salamander, this time with a more focused mental appraisal. It measured roughly 1.5 meters in length, possessed clawed feet, and beady green eyes. Each claw, approximately 1/2 foot long, appeared lethally sharp. The creature continued to study him, unhurriedly chewing on its fish. How does one absorb this creature? Dorian asked Ozra, intrigued. In your current nascent state, it is exceedingly improbable you will achieve any absorption without the assistance of your soul spell matrix. Due to his worship's machinations, your soul spell matrix will facilitate absorption precisely 3 times. If you desire to absorb this creature, simply issue the command and I shall assist. Ozra's cool voice responded within Dorian's mind. What occurs upon absorption? He questioned in return. As this constitutes your inaugural absorption, your current unestablished form will adopt numerous characteristics of the absorbed entity. Ozra replied. Is there a means by which you can delineate these characteristics for me? Dorian asked, already strategizing. A thrill of excitement coursed through him as he contemplated the ramifications. The profound shock of death and rebirth into a bizarre new world within an alien body hadn't yet been fully processed by Dorian. Nevertheless, he was adapting. His forte lay in handling unforeseen situations and resolving problems. As long as he could maintain a detached perspective and concentrate on the immediate, the existential shock could be deferred. Questions of returning home, if even possible, would await a later time. No, not at this juncture. Your soul spell matrix is too rudimentary, and your soul would be unable to withstand the resulting strain, came the cool reply. So, a gamble then, he muttered, re-examining the salamander. He shrugged inwardly. Still, better than a fish, and the sooner I shed this amorphous state, the better. His immediate safety was now of overriding importance. He possessed an innate awareness of his current form's extreme fragility. Asra, assist me in absorbing that salamander, he commanded, acknowledged. Asra's cool voice affirmed. Instantly, the golden bead within Dorian blazed. The intricately connected symbols whirred and vibrated, and a potent beam of white light shot forth from Dorian's form. In less than a second, the light seared through the air, impacting the green-scaled salamander's chest. Before the creature could even register the assault, it was instantly deceased. The beam vanished into the salamander's chest as it crumpled to the ground, its eyes devoid of life. A scant moment later, the salamander's corpse abruptly propelled itself towards Dorian. It traversed the air like a vessel cleaving water, impacting Dorian's form with a resonant thud. Dorian processed the entire event in a fractional second, astonished by the sheer rapidity of the radiant attack. The very instant he had commanded Osra's assistance, the salamander had ceased to live. Target retrieved, commencing absorption. Osra's voice broke Dorian's stupor. White light once again emanated from the golden bead. A crescendo of luminescence enveloped both Dorian and the salamander's corpse, and in an instant, the world around Dorian dissolved into a misty, white landscape. This is your evolution space. A small orb of light materialized in the ethereal white landscape, hovering before Dorian. He gazed at it for a moment, then scanned the surroundings, a flicker of confusion crossing him. "Osra, is that you?" he inquired. The encompassing space felt like a cool, nebulous sea. He found himself inexplicably relaxed and comfortable simply by drifting here. Curiously, he could no longer perceive his body, not even his previous amorphous state. "Yes," the orb of light affirmed, then continued. "You have successfully absorbed a specimen of red salamander. Its blood origins are registered as bloodline origins, 74% red salamander, 18% forested ancient snake, 6% hollow lizard, degraded, 1% Maya dragon, degraded, 1% various undetermined bloodlines, currently too minuscule to quantify. Mostly red salamander? Then why the green scales?" he questioned. The figures enunciated by the orb had simultaneously appeared within his mind, accompanied by a chart detailing various attributes of the recently absorbed salamander. The Maya dragon is celebrated for its lustrous green scales. Salamander degraded. This particular salamander harbored a highly degraded version of the Maya dragon bloodline within its veins, just sufficient to bestow extremely minor draconic attributes, specifically the distinctive green scales. "I understand. So, what is the next step?" Dorian inquired, uncertain. "Upon absorbing a creature, you gain the faculty to combine, isolate, and extract its bloodlines. To evolve into a particular creature, a sufficient quantity of its bloodline is requisite for your soul spell matrix to process. As you undergo evolution, it is feasible to intermingle bloodlines or assimilate abilities from distinct bloodlines, thereby forging a more perfected lineage. Furthermore, you can absorb the latent energy from any deceased creature's soul spell matrix, utilizing it to advance your own and accelerate your evolutions. His worship's singular objective was to engineer the consummate organism. Among the billions of beasts and entities he meticulously researched, his worship remained uncertain as to which truly represented the apex of power. Thus, the imperative for all his children is to grow, evolve, and unequivocally demonstrate, through sheer strength, what the perfect organism embodies. All right. So I can absorb the red salamander's bloodline, correct? What precisely do you mean by isolate bloodlines? He pressed. The 30,000 worlds teem with an innumerable multitude of living creature bloodlines. A being's inherent strength and potential for future growth are primarily governed by its bloodline. Most creatures find their development or power constrained by these lineages, a phenomenon referred to as bloodline shackles. Transcending these limitations necessitates evolving one's bloodline, a feat prohibitively challenging for ordinary beings. You possess the capacity to absorb either the entirety of a target's bloodline or only a portion thereof. Assimilating diverse bloodlines will confer varying abilities and strengths, and fundamentally alter your physical composition. Dorian glanced back at the mental display, reviewing the salamander's statistics. In the background, white fog drifted, lending an ethereal quality to the space. Which bloodline here holds the greatest potency? The Maya dragon, perhaps? He speculated, reasoning that any lineage containing dragon must surely be powerful. In terms of overall potential, yes. However, this particular bloodline is severely degraded, Osra replied. Oh, does that imply I cannot absorb it? Dorian countered. No, your soul spell matrix possesses the capability to rectify the damaged segments of a degraded bloodline. Nevertheless, a significantly larger quantity of Maya dragon bloodline would be required for evolution. Your soul spell matrix contains all of his worship's recorded research, yet it cannot conjure something from nothing. Ozra's comprehensive response clarified the matter. Understood. So, Ozra, what course of action do you recommend now? He asked, mulling it over. His worship theorizes that the consummate organism will necessitate a fusion of bloodlines, yielding hybrid creatures perhaps unknown even to him. However, the bloodlines currently at your disposal are utterly insufficient to sustain a potent hybrid. Furthermore, your soul is too frail to support the physical manifestation of any formidable hybrid, let alone a powerful normal beast. Dorian nodded, his mental equivalent of rubbing his chin. This was intricate. He pressed on, voicing a persistent question. Are there no bloodlines pre-stored within my matrix? If you possess such extensive data, why did God King Ukali, or whoever, not embed bloodlines as well? He frowned. God King Ukali is his worship's name. The Matrix genie's voice was subtly reproachful. And his worship resided in the divine realm, transcendent of the 30,000 worlds. When he fashioned the children, his sole aspiration was for the perfect organism to emerge. The firstborn of his flock, he decreed, would forge its own path, evolving by serendipity. Dorian contemplated Osra's words. His origins in this place appeared more convoluted than he'd initially surmised. Nevertheless, immediate concerns demanded his attention. Very well, we shall commence with the red salamander bloodline, given its abundance. Acknowledged. Osra affirmed. Instantly, the ethereal world surrounding Dorian pulsed crimson. Text materialized in his mind. Absorbing red salamander bloodline. Within moments, the bloodline was fully assimilated. A new message superseded the previous one before Dorian. Red salamander bloodline successfully absorbed. Growth stage 3/5, young adult. Dorian regarded the displayed figures, querying, growth stage, what, precisely, does that signify? The quantity of red salamander blood absorbed, combined with the energy within your soul spell matrix, proved insufficient to attain full maturity. You must absorb the energy of other beings to further develop your physical form's maturity. As Azra spoke, a fresh message materialized before Dorian. Body reconstruction in progress, body reconstruction complete. Transferring from evolution space, a fractional second later, the ethereal world dissipated and he found himself resituated in the rocky clearing. The landscape momentarily shimmered as his perception recalibrated. Dorian blinked, startled by the sudden transformation. Wait a moment, I blinked. He yelped mentally, glancing downwards. Two red-scaled claws, several inches long, greeted him. A pair of stubby red arms connected these claws to a powerful-looking torso. His amorphous existence had been entirely superseded by the form of a red salamander, slightly over a meter in length. It worked. He attempted a smile, though his reptilian visage was ill-suited for human expressions. Dorian stepped forward, savoring the sensation of movement. A profound comfort enveloped him as he stirred, a realization that momentarily surprised him. It took a moment to attribute this peculiar feeling to the sunlight warming him from above. He flexed his arms, feeling muscles ripple beneath his scales. Controlling an animal form was an odd, almost disorienting experience, yet simultaneously, the movements and control felt astonishingly natural, coming to him as if by second nature. It's warm. Osra, what are the specific attributes or special characteristics of a red salamander? He inquired. Red salamanders are omnivorous, subsisting on both meat and plant matter or berries. They exhibit a minor affinity for fire. A unique metabolic process allows them to gather energy from sunlight as a substitute for sustenance. They possess no inherent abilities, but are endowed with enhanced vision, beneficial for prey detection. Osra's voice remained calm in his mind. All right, he murmured, redirecting his gaze to his surroundings. The world now unfolded with significantly greater detail than he had perceived as an amorphous blob. The rocky outcropping he occupied revealed itself as the flank of a rather colossal stony mountain. His red salamander vision was remarkably clear, allowing him to discern the entire jagged peak. Dense forested areas bordered the mountain, forming a thick tree line. Dorian realized he was positioned directly alongside this tree line, what he had earlier misidentified as a mere clearing. Faint growls and roars of unseen animals and beasts reverberated from the forest depths. A particularly deafening roar made him whip his head towards the mountain summit. A colossal black and white spotted panther had just materialized there, unleashing an extraordinarily loud bellow. The panther spanned easily a dozen meters in length and several in height, a prodigious creature that virtually exuded peril. As it roared, an immense bird-like entity suddenly plunged from the distant sky, a blur even to Dorian's enhanced vision due to its incredible speed. The two gargantuan entities collided atop the mountain, erupting in an explosion of rock and dust. "Where in the hell am I?" he murmured, retreating a few steps. A cascade of rocks, dislodged from the mountain peak, began to tumble downwards, some heading directly for Dorian. Oh dear! Without hesitation, Dorian spun about and scrambled into the protective cover of the tree line. Dorian advanced with agonizing slowness, navigating the tree branch he clung to with extreme caution. His instincts and physical prowess in his red salamander form were remarkably ingrained by his transformation, granting him a degree of control and agility a regular human could never hope to achieve in such a guise. After a few more measured steps, Dorian was positioned several feet above a small, babbling stream, approximately 2 feet deep. Dozens of blue-scaled fish, each sporting a large bluish-white fin, were discernible moving through the water. Minor ripples disturbed the stream's surface. A scattering of grass patches lined its banks, yet this particular stretch of forest was largely uninhabited. A few tense moments elapsed as he gazed downwards, unblinking. Then, abruptly, Dorian's predatory instincts flared, and he launched himself directly downwards without hesitation, plummeting towards the stream. He plunged into the water, immediately snapping his jaws shut, ensnaring one of the blue-scaled fish. The remaining fish in the stream scattered instantly, fleeing in frantic waves. A faint tang of red blood oozed from the struggling blue-scaled fish clamped in his teeth, staining the surrounding water crimson. The taste of blood in his mouth, the frothy flesh of the small fish, was almost euphoric. Within his mind, a subtle notification from the soul spell matrix materialized. White riverfin bloodline successfully stored, growth stage 2/2, mature fish. Not bad. That one's complete. Dorian mumbled, masticating the remains of the fish before swallowing. His palate had undergone a drastic transformation since assuming the red salamander form. As a human, raw food was an unthinkable prospect. As a red salamander, cooking was merely a superfluous step. 3 days had elapsed since Dorian's transmigration to this world. During that period, he had been anything but idle. Having escaped the rockslide triggered by the clash of the two gargantuan mountain beasts, Dorian had embarked on a wary exploration deep within the forest. He navigated through the treetops, meticulously avoiding detection by other creatures. His red salamander body's movements now felt fully natural and adapted. Dorian's primary objective had been to establish a secure resting place. After searching for most of the inaugural day, he discovered a tall tree with a hollowed-out crown. Lacking alternatives, he designated this as his temporary sanctuary, passing the night there. Forest nights, Dorian quickly learned, were truly terrifying. Peculiar creatures stirred in the gloom, and incessant howls and bestial clashes echoed, saturating the world with an undercurrent of dread. Dorian, secretly horrified by these observations, remained concealed in his treetop perch until dawn. Dorian was now pursuing his second objective, gaining strength. Enough to navigate this alien land without fear. Ozra had explained that a creature's potency correlated directly with the development of its bloodline. He could enhance his own lineage by absorbing energy from other beings, or by directly assimilating the bloodlines of additional red salamanders. Natural development through aging was also an option, but one requiring considerably more time. Certain creatures, red salamanders among them, possessed the inherent capacity to evolve. Therefore, Dorian had commenced hunting. Osra, what is my proximity to the next growth stage for the red salamander? Instead of a verbal response, another screen displaying floating text materialized in his mind. Red salamander, growth stage, 3/5, young adult, growth progress, 97/100, almost there, he murmured. In the preceding days, he had encountered no other red salamanders, necessitating predation on alternative creatures to absorb their energy and advance his own bloodline. A beneficial side effect of this had been the acquisition of several weak bloodlines for future use, such as the fully matured white riverfin he had just successfully stored. By accumulating a sufficient quantity of any creature's bloodline, he could achieve a fully mature lineage, available later for experimentation or transformation. Fortunately, thanks to his unique soul spell matrix, he wasn't compelled to engage formidable opponents to augment his strength. Merely absorbing energy from weaker creatures would advance his bloodline, albeit at a slightly slower pace than dispatching more powerful beasts. Yet, in the long term, the outcomes would converge, a fact he found reassuring. His personal safety in this bizarre world held absolute priority. "All right, one more fish should suffice," he murmured, surveying his immediate environment. Beyond the stream and scattered grass, the landscape was cloaked by towering, verdant trees, their branches interlaced. He detected no other large creatures nearby, fostering a sense of relative security. Glancing skyward, he noted the sun, a large yellow orb akin to Earth's, hung almost directly overhead in a nearly cloudless sky, indicating it was only around noon. Ample daylight remained. Dorian crept to the stream's edge, peering into the water. No fish remained. They had dispersed upstream or downstream to evade him. The earlier bloodstain had already dissipated, but Dorian knew it would be minutes, perhaps longer, before any returned. Just as he was about to turn, an abrupt glint of gold captured his attention. He paused, licking his lips in a distinctly salamander fashion, his focus narrowing on the light's source. At the stream's bottom, snared on a nondescript brown rock, lay a gleaming gold ring adorned with a small blue gem. "Oh?" Dorian mused, taking a few lateral steps to approach. He soon found himself parallel to the ring, positioned precisely at the stream's midpoint from the bank. "Ausra, do magical rings exist?" A ring discovered at random in a river, particularly this deep within an unexplored forest, inevitably stoked his suspicions. Any being possessing a sufficiently potent soul can imbue specific objects with abilities derived from their soul spell matrix. Moreover, skilled artisans can leverage their own capacities to forge unique items possessing distinct powers. I surmise these would qualify as magic rings. However, such artifacts are customarily found exclusively on bipedal entities such as humans, vampires, Boromers, titans, or similar races. Osra lucidly explained. A sudden, intense desire for the ring flared within Dorian upon hearing this. Even if it proved to be an ordinary bauble, the only true drawback was getting slightly damp. Dorian plunged into the river, propelling himself towards the ring, his right claw extended to snatch it as he cut through the water. Just as he prepared to scoop up the ring, the brown rock it lay upon suddenly shuddered. A split second later, it sprang open, transforming from a mere stone into a clam-like entity that clamped down on Dorian's right arm with dozens of sharp, piercing teeth. Despite the surprise, Dorian did not panic. The instant his arm was ensnared, feeling the sharp teeth begin to penetrate his scales, he executed a powerful second leap, rocketing himself from the stream. His potent scaled legs possessed sufficient force to cleave a small tree, so exiting the water in a single bound proved effortless. Mid-air, Dorian twisted, bringing his right arm beneath him to examine the clam-like creature clinging to him. Despite its sharp teeth, it hadn't managed to pierce deeply. The resilient red salamander scales had largely deflected the damage. Dorian slammed the clam creature violently onto the ground near the stream, deliberately targeting a pile of rocks. With each impact, he felt fresh cracks spiderweb across the brown creature's shell. "Get off me!" Dorian thought, repeatedly smashing the clam against the rocks. Though only about 1.5 meters long, the power of Dorian's current form vastly surpassed his former human physical strength. After 6 brutal impacts, Dorian felt the clam's grip on his arms slacken. The instant it did, he flung the creature away, hearing it splash into the river. He stumbled back a step, examining his right arm, which bore several mangled tooth marks. Small trickles of blood seeped from each wound. He trembled for a few moments, struggling to regain his composure, swallowing hard. "Damn. Okay. All right. I'm fine," he murmured inwardly, still shaking. As he calmed, his arm began to ache, the wounds prickling. Water streamed down his scales, collecting in a small puddle beneath him. Adrenaline surged through him, maintaining his heightened state of alert. He breathed heavily in his salamander form, endeavoring to steady himself. "Everything here attempts to kill me." "What a savage place," Dorian mused, blinking and shaking his head. His carelessness was to blame. Yet, he reasoned, he'd never encountered such a creature and had no prior knowledge of its existence. Should I attempt to absorb it? He wondered, turning towards the river. He scanned the stream's length, finding no trace of the peculiar brown clam. "Ausra, what was that entity?" he questioned. "While I cannot definitively identify its bloodline, its morphology and behavior align with that of a brown treasure clam. These are singular creatures, intricately linked with fate. Its presence in this vicinity is highly probable to be a consequence of his worship manipulating fate to direct you into this world." Ozra elaborated. "Brown treasure clams possess an ardent affinity for objects deeply intertwined with destiny, perpetually seeking new, fated treasures. Regarding their typical interactions, when hunting, they first inject any beast foolish enough to make contact with a potent sleeping sedative. They then proceed to feast upon the incapacitated victim, which invariably leads to death." Ozra coolly concluded. "Poisonous? What?" Dorian exclaimed, alarmed, turning to inspect his wounded arm. He felt no peculiar effects. "The spell matrix within your soul was engineered to grant you control over bloodlines. Many lineages are inherently venomous. His worship anticipated such predicaments and incorporated safeguards. Poisons of nearly all varieties will have no discernible effect on you. Though your primary bloodline is that of a red salamander, any extraneous substances will be automatically sampled and stored by your soul spell matrix." "Oh? Could you display the composition of the venom?" Ozra, intrigued, complied. "Brown treasure clam. Growth stage 2/2 venom. Stored amount 30 mL. Not a significant quantity. Still, potentially useful for later." Dorian mused. He mentally dismissed the screen, watching it recede, before inquiring. "Ausra, could you provide a warning next time if you detect a recognized creature of that nature?" Ausra offered no reply. "All right." Dorian frowned. The genie within his spell matrix appeared to respond only at its own discretion. Nevertheless, Ausra's aid was immeasurable, and he truly had no grounds for complaint. As he surveyed his slightly mangled right arm, Dorian offered a lizard-like approximation of a smile. He slowly rotated his right claw upward, revealing a small golden ring. Though he hadn't secured the brown treasure clam itself, he had at least managed to seize the ring it guarded. The injuries he'd sustained were inconsequential. Ozra had confirmed that red salamanders possessed formidable vitality. Minor wounds such as these would mend within hours. Already the bleeding had ceased. "Now, how does one employ you?" he murmured inwardly, examining the ring. "Osra, any suggestions?" Silence again. "I suppose I'll attempt to wear it." After a few moments of deliberation, Dorian slid the ring onto his outermost right claw. He remained on edge, however, poised to rip it off at a moment's notice. Moments passed without incident. Faint roars in the distance hinted at ferocious beasts traversing the forest. A gentle breeze stirred, ruffling the surface of the stream where Dorian stood. Then, a golden stream of light gradually emanated from the ring. Dorian observed as it expanded in the air, briefly shimmering, before slowly flowing towards him. He watched as the light made contact, perceiving no threat or danger. With its touch, a warm surge of energy flooded his chest, accompanied by a small influx of knowledge, conveying a brief message. "To whomever receives this, be aware that fate has designated you the harbinger of my demise. I am the illustrious elder mage Horhavil, now brought to death's threshold. After mastering the Tao of Light and ascending to the zenith of the soul's angelic stage, I endeavored to shatter the fetters binding me to the 30,000 worlds and attain godhood. Alas, I have failed. In my moment of utmost vulnerability, a cabal of sorcerers from my perfidious allies, the Golden Kingdom, betrayed and struck me down. Despite my fatal wounds, I managed to escape, slaying 2 of their pariah mages in the process and rending a rift in the void, which brought me here. The location of my demise is here, deep within this beast-ridden forest. Between 2 sundered mountains, in the darkest chasm of this valley, I draw my last breath. My treasures are yours. I only request that, one day, you inform Holy Duke Archel of the Elector Empire that the Golden Kingdom committed this treachery. Thank you." The cycle endures. The message concluded, leaving Dorian enveloped in a profound sense of wonder. Godhood? Mastery of a Tao of Light? Such esoteric concepts were baffling, yet they carried such extraordinary promise that he couldn't help but be captivated. He yearned to learn more about this world. Perhaps Osra could provide answers. Before he could voice a query, however, Osra's voice resonated in his mind. "Sufficient energy for absorption has permeated your form. Would you like to assimilate this energy to further the development of your red salamander bloodline?" "What?" Oh, the golden luminescence. Dorian instantly realized. Yes, absolutely. He was so near the next stage. If the warm golden energy now suffusing him proved adequate, boosting his strength here would be effortless. Acknowledged. Dorian felt the warm energy within him recede as it was voraciously drawn into his soul spell matrix. Nitrite, Lana. Simultaneously, a pale blue screen-bearing text materialized in his mind. Red salamander, growth stage 3/5, young adult, growth progress 786/100. Before he could fully process this, a second screen instantly appeared, stating, "Growth progress exceeded limit. Growth stage evolution engaged." Transporting to evolution space, the familiar, ethereal white mist of the evolution space enveloped Dorian once more. It seemed the transition between growth stages was an automatic intrinsic process. Before him, a spectral outline of his red salamander form coalesced, suspended in the void. Though faintly translucent, it was an exact replica, down to the minor scale abrasions scarring his right arm. He observed as the spectral form gradually morphed. Its length stretched, growing from just over 1.5 meters to approximately 1 2/3 meters. The crimson scales fused, their surface gaining a noticeable sheen and an inherent, newfound resilience. His claws acquired a subtle red tint, and the musculature throughout his body visibly bulked. Body transformation complete. Red salamander, growth stage 4/5, mature adult, growth, progress 686/956. So this is me now, he murmured, scrutinizing the evolving form. That ring's energy really made a difference. Mid-examination, 2 new holographic displays flickered into existence. NEW Abilaflame, Skrals Desra, a rudimentary, low-tier ability common among flame bears, flame tigers, and other creatures attuned to the flame aspect. It involves channeling energy into one's claws, superheating them to a point of potent destructive burning. The intensity of the heat is directly proportional to the energy channeled. This ability manifests naturally as their bloodline develops. Concurrently with the ability's appearance, a comprehensive understanding of its use flooded Dorian's mind. He instinctively grasped the mechanics, how to draw soul energy, channel it into his claws, and concentrate it to achieve superheated temperatures, all while instinctively safeguarding his own scales and body from the searing heat. Whoa, interesting. He uttered, his gaze fixed on the text. As he absorbed the information, he perceived, more viscerally than visually, the ability integrate into his soul spell matrix. It coalesced into a complex array of symbols, blending with the golden orb of light nestled within his soul. Such abilities, he now knew, were permanently etched into this matrix, their knowledge indelible. Asra, what's the strength of my soul? He inquired. The newly acquired knowledge suggested that the fundamental potency of this attack, and indeed any similar technique, stemmed from his soul, the seat of his soul spell matrix. A more robust soul meant a greater reservoir of energy to draw upon and channel, allowing for more potent techniques and overall power. The logic was simple. With the soul spell matrix residing within the soul itself, a powerful soul naturally translated into a powerful being. Instead of a verbal reply, another display manifested mentally. Dorian Soul, Status Soul Stage, Hearth Stage PAK, Health Perfect. This succinct readout detailed his soul's current state. Dorian gazed at it, momentarily baffled. Asra, explain this. He requested, attempting to gesture at the intangible display, a reflex he instantly regretted, remembering his formless state within the evolution space. Asra, however, seemed to comprehend his intent, her cool voice chiming. Your soul stage denotes the current developmental level of your soul. Advancing between these stages is exceedingly arduous, typically demanding a significant investment of both time and accumulated energy. You currently reside at the peak of the Earth soul stage. Notably, across the 30,000 worlds, nearly half of all creatures never transcend beyond this Earth stage. As Asra relayed this, a fresh screen materialized. Soul stages, Grandmaster Uarth Chor. This enumerates the distinct soul stages attainable through development. Dorian scanned the list. His gaze snagged on Angelic Stage, triggering a memory of the ring's cryptic message, which had hinted at reaching precisely that tier. His admiration for the deceased mage surged. So I'm not at the absolute bottom then. Interesting. It's almost like a video game from Earth, he mused. Asra, is there any expedited method to augment my soul's power? He recognized the intimate link between soul strength and his overall personal might. A potent soul offered a far greater margin of safety. Augmenting soul strength is inherently a protracted process, requiring a natural accumulation of time and energy. Asra explained. However, your unique soul spell matrix offers a distinctive avenue for acceleration. By cultivating and assimilating powerful bloodlines, then allowing them to mature, you can significantly hasten your soul's growth. The potency of the bloodline directly correlates with the degree of enhancement. Continue to evolve, and your strength shall know no bounds. Comprehending, Dorian nodded and swiftly exited the evolution space. The ethereal realm dissolved in a fleeting flash, replaced by the familiar forest and babbling stream. The peculiar temporal distortion of the evolution space meant that, to all appearances, no time had elapsed in the physical world. Manifesting back in reality, Dorian stretched, reveling in the flex of his now elongated, melded scales, a testament to his mature red salamander form. A distinct, palpable surge of strength and power coursed through him. He observed his right arm, The previous wounds had vanished, completely healed. His entire physique, from musculature and teeth to claws, had undergone a significant increase in size and development. It was then he noticed the absence of the ring, previously adorning his right claw. He blinked, then recoiled, a touch of panic stirring as he frantically scanned the ground. A brief search yielded the ring's shattered remnants, strewn amidst the grass near the river rocks. Either his physical transformation or the explosive release of its contained energy had reduced the artifact to a mere, inert heap of metal. Dorian grunted, then shrugged, a rather incongruous gesture for a 1.5 meter long, slightly less than a meter tall red salamander. His gaze shifted to his claws, his mind focusing on the recently acquired knowledge, the flame claw's ability. Delving deeper into its description, he understood it to be a rudimentary technique. The instructions, etched within his soul spell matrix, detailed the precise method of channeling soul energy to superheat his claws, alongside an inherent energy buffer at their base to prevent self-immolation. He resolved to test it at once. The immediate vicinity remained clear of large predators, a calm he knew wouldn't endure long in this verdant jungle. For now, he was safe. Closing his eyes, Dorian focused. Inwardly, he perceived the luminous golden bead that was his soul spell matrix. This golden nucleus was encased within a translucent, fist-sized bubble, his soul. It was a semi-formless energy construct, intrinsically embodying his essence and serving as the conduit to his soul spell matrix. The evolutionary knowledge indicated a simple activation. Dorian merely needed to consciously direct his soul's energy to flow along his body and into his claws, following the prescribed pattern. He attempted it, concentrating on his soul. After a brief interval, a warm, subtle sensation blossomed, gradually diffusing through his body. It then began to coalesce within his right claw, following the precise energy conduit etched into his soul spell matrix. Moments later, he felt a distinct heat radiating from his claws. Opening his eyes, he maintained his focus, intently examining his right claw. Over their usual black sheen, his claws had acquired a faint reddish tint, subtly mirroring the crimson scales at their base. He lightly tapped a claw against the grass below, observing a few blades sizzle and crisp instantly. The inner warmth invigorated him, though he perceived no increase in physical strength. Dorian took a few cautious steps, then launched himself with an immense leap towards a nearby towering tree. He impacted the tree a good 6 meters up, having inadvertently overshot his mark. Scrambling for purchase, he dug his claws in. He'd momentarily forgotten his recent evolution to the next red salamander growth stage and the resultant boost in strength. Yet, the instant his front claws touched, they sliced through the tree's bark, sinking deep. Small bursts of flame ignited and swiftly extinguished. A disconcerting fatigue washed over Dorian. He immediately ceased drawing soul energy, clinging to the tree, a wave of faint dizziness assailing him. Asra, display my soul's energy reserves, standardize maximum capacity at 100%, and indicate full recharge time, he instructed. As his familiarity with the genie and his soul spell matrix deepened, he'd refined his requests for more pragmatic, engineer-like specificity. A blue display materialized in his mind, his familiar soul status screen, now augmented with an additional entry. Dorian, soul status, soul stage, Arth stage, PAK cells perfect energy 47%, Edmel, minor cheats to unfold residual recents is unishes energy drain, not land foldage to unfold state and transfoldage gunned in 41 minutes skis. This ability is a massive energy drain, not alone, not during dusudran, some during 3 and effect not to 1 to 1 non turn. Dorian doze nam non tun listen. Listen. Dun 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 He mused aloud. Perhaps it's not the ability itself that's so demanding, but my inefficient application of it. I need more practice. He mentally catalogued potential exercises, aiming both to accustom himself to his new form and to refine his soul energy manipulation. However, a loud, approaching roar shattered Dorian's focus, and he looked up with a jolt of fear. Even with his recent evolution, he was acutely aware of the vastly more powerful creatures inhabiting this forest. He swiftly clambered higher into the tree, then launched himself, bounding from limb to limb, putting distance between himself, the stream, and the unseen threat. Descending from his current perch, Dorian surveyed the towering mountain range ahead. Massive, stark edifices of grey and black stone, they were riddled with jagged ledges and precipitous drops. In stark contrast to the vibrant, teeming forests at his back, these mountains radiated a palpable sense of foreboding and danger. 2 days had elapsed since Dorian's discovery of the enchanted ring and his subsequent evolution to the 4th growth stage of his red salamander form. In this time, he had fully adapted to his larger, more potent body and had journeyed towards the mountainous expanse where he'd first awakened. His proficiency with flame claws had significantly improved. Though the ability was, by all accounts, a basic technique, Dorian's practice revealed the depth of his ignorance regarding his soul, its energies, and the intricate workings of the soul spell matrix. By now, Dorian had largely acclimatized to the bewildering reality of his new existence. His earth-bound intellectual pursuits of mathematics and physics had been supplanted by a burgeoning obsession, comprehending his soul and the enigmatic matrix it housed. The inherent fascination and the tantalizing secrets he sensed within were compelling. Vast realms of knowledge lay before him, an opportunity he had no intention of squandering. Through persistent trial and error, Dorian unearthed a crucial insight. Rigorous control over the energy flowing within the soul spell matrix's inscribed pattern dramatically enhanced his soul's energy output efficiency. It wasn't enough to merely allow the energy to follow the flame claw's conduit. He needed to guide it with meticulous precision, exactly as the matrix dictated. This refined control allowed his claws to blaze for up to 10 minutes, transforming from a faint red glow to a vibrant, fiery crimson, radiating significantly greater heat. Shaking his head, Dorian refocused on the mountains stretching before him. His gaze settled on 2 particularly prominent peaks standing side by side, among the largest visible in his field of vision. Their distinctiveness lay in their utterly shattered summits. Colossal rents and gashes clawed deep into their slopes. Between 2 shattered mountains, in the darkest pit of this valley, Dorian murmured, recalling a fragment of the magic ring's message, his eyes glinting as he studied the twin shattered peaks. He then cautiously began to circumnavigate the base of his current mountain, setting a course for the distinctive scarred summits. "Wood magic, Genova's flying arc," cried a young human, his voice ringing out as he held his hands before him. He wore elegant grey silk robes. His face was slender and handsome, framed by piercing blue eyes and a genial smile, a visage that might have been unremarkable were it not for the fervent gleam within those eyes. The words barely left his lips before a mysterious cluster of symbols erupted before him. From this nexus, a prodigious quantity of wood manifested, bending, stretching, and twisting into the form of a mid-sized vessel. Roughly 20 meters long and a dozen meters wide, it was crafted entirely from dark brown timber. A substantial pillar, an empty mast, rose from its center, while a small cabin at one end offered ingress to its interior. A smattering of applause rippled through the air as the young man, now slightly pale, turned and offered a triumphant smile. "What did I tell you earlier, Captain Lancaster?" he asked. The newly conjured wooden vessel now floated just beyond the edge of a dense forest. In the distance, dozens of mountains pierced the sky, among them two distinct peaks whose rocky summits had been utterly shattered, as if by some immense external force. A long, paved stone path led to the forest's edge, continuing onward, but soon degrading into a simpler dirt track. On this stone path, a quartet of men now stood, their gazes fixed on the wooden boat the handsome man had just summoned. "It's certainly larger than last time, sir, and deadly accurate," boomed a gruff, muscular man. Clad in black leather armor with a broadsword strapped to his back, he nodded and let out a hearty laugh. His face was grizzled and lined, suggesting his mid-40s, with a short, graying black beard complementing his strong jaw and a nose visibly broken multiple times. His short, entirely grey hair contrasted with his still dark beard, yet suited his imposing 6.5-foot stature. Flanking the captain were two younger men, likely in their early 30s, similarly attired in black leather armor. Their faces were tanned and equally muscular, each bearing a pair of short swords at their waists. Lancaster had once mentioned them as twins from one of the lesser 30,000 worlds, fortune seekers who had ultimately joined the Universal Kinto Guard with him. The fourth observer, a man in faded green armor with a longbow across his back, the quintessential forest ranger, offered a friendly nod to the young conjurer. "This will undoubtedly prove invaluable for traversing the forest, saving us significant time. However, we'll still need to disembark and proceed on foot once we approach the mountains. Grandmaster-class beasts, after all, inhabit those peaks." His face was obscured by a camouflage of green and grey paint, rendering his features indistinct apart from a thick brown beard. Of course," William Robel, the wizard, affirmed with a nod. Having only recently ascended to the sky stage in wood magic, he possessed a keen understanding of the perils posed by potent beasts, particularly those with powerful souls. While his own spells were formidable, and soul strength wasn't the sole determinant of power, prudence dictated caution. Across the 30,000 worlds, tens of thousands of distinct magical disciplines existed. The overwhelming majority of wizards dedicated themselves to mastering a single type, as each demanded incredibly intricate energy concentrations channeled through one's spell soul matrix. While spells within a given discipline shared broadly similar symbolic incantations and energy manipulations, more potent or complex spells inherently demanded greater effort and precision. William specialized in wood magic, a versatile, jack-of-all-trades discipline well suited to his preference for independent operation. It wasn't the most potent or spectacular form of magic, but he'd had few alternatives when choosing his path, his destiny largely sealed by his birth as a bastard. He dismissed these tangential thoughts, however, bringing his focus back to the immediate objective, the hunt for the legendary Ironhide wolf, rumored to prowl the mountainous depths. Dorian huddled, slipping his body between two small boulders, holding himself utterly still. He didn't even dare to draw breath, maintaining absolute silence. The ground vibrated with heavy footsteps as an enormous beast lumbered past his hiding place, descending the mountain slope. "That's a dinosaur. Are you serious?" Dorian mentally shrieked, all the while ensuring not a single sound escaped him. A colossal, 10-meter-tall dinosaur, adorned with feathered green scales, continued its progress. It hunched as it turned, tracing a path along the mountain Dorian had been ascending. The creature bore an uncanny resemblance to the Tyrannosaurus rex from Dorian's home world, a massive head bristling with sharp, deadly teeth, a hulking, muscular physique, and disproportionately small forelimbs. As it moved, the beast exuded a potent, terrifying aura, its sheer power dwarfing Dorian's nascent strength. "Ausra," Dorian mentally whispered, his gaze fixed on the creature with intense curiosity. "You mentioned 3 instances where you could assist with the absorption process, correct? Can you help me absorb that beast?" Ausra's cool, calm voice replied within his mind. "Your soul would be overwhelmed attempting to integrate a creature of that magnitude. It appears to be a pure-blood Grandmaster class green-scaled ground dragon. Presently, you are restricted to absorbing sky-class beasts or lower. Anything beyond that threshold would violate the safety parameters established by His Holiness. Dorian grumbled inwardly but ultimately conceded. It seemed his options were limited. He waited a few more moments for the creature to pass completely out of view. With a sigh, he then lifted his gaze to the distant, fractured summits. The mountain creatures, it was clear, were considerably more lethal than their forest counterparts. He resumed his cautious ascent regardless. Once Dorian fixed his mind on a goal, he possessed an unyielding stubbornness, pursuing it until achieved. His red salamander form proved remarkably adept at navigating the treacherous rocky terrain. His scaled, padded feet provided excellent grip, and his claws could dig into the mountain face, securing him against slips. He spent several hours meticulously traversing the mountains, moving from ledge to ledge, boulder to boulder, outcropping to outcropping. On 2 occasions, he was forced to conceal himself as immense, formidable beasts passed by, their terrifying auras radiating palpable power. Along his route, he encountered several plants of mystical appearance. Upon approaching them, he learned they were magic herbs or magic plants, naturally occurring in mountainous environments. Osra informed him that these herbs served as a prime source of energy and sustenance for local wildlife, and mysteriously respawned after consumption, adhering to some arcane existential law unknown even to her. Dorian sampled one of the magic herbs, a brilliant red holjop fruit. Its taste was exquisite, and as he consumed it, warm tendrils of energy suffused his body. It was a remarkably luxurious sensation, causing him to shiver faintly. Immediately afterward, he checked his growth progress, noting a subtle shift. Red salamander, growth stage, 4/5, mature AGULT. Growth progress, 721/956. The fruit had provided a respectable boost to his growth. It seemed these were indeed valuable edibles. However, after just one fruit, his appetite was largely satisfied, suggesting he couldn't consume too many of these fruits or herbs in rapid succession. Besides the colossal creatures he'd hidden from, he also encountered numerous flocks of mountain deer, robust, agile cervids native to the highlands, a small cluster of scaled vultures, and a herd of formidable iron oxen. He elected to avoid them all for the present. Should he desire their bloodlines, he could always return later. His current objective remained the mysterious treasure left by the deceased wizard. He did, however, take the opportunity to question Osra about each creature. According to her, all beasts possessed inherent limitations on their ultimate strength and growth. Dorian's red salamander form, for instance, would reach its limit at the subsequent growth stage. In terms of raw power, he would be perpetually capped as a sky-class beast at best. The mountain deer he'd observed were Earth-class limited, as were the scaled vultures, while the iron oxen could potentially ascend to sky-class. His true quest was for a beast capable of attaining a higher developmental tier. Absorbing its bloodline would allow him to transform, growing exponentially stronger. The more his soul matured, the more power he could imbue even into weaker beast forms. Dorian envisioned a brilliant future unfolding before him, one where he would be utterly unburdened by danger, free to pursue leisure and relaxation. Perhaps, if his burgeoning powers truly functioned as they seemed, he might even reclaim his human form. Before long, Dorian reached his objective, the valley nestled between the 2 shattered mountains. Mid-afternoon had arrived by the time he reached it. The valley lay cloaked in the shadows cast by the towering peaks, lending it a somber, dim appearance. Otherwise, it seemed unremarkable, traversed by a small stream and bordered by forested glades along its mountainous flanks. He shrugged, then advanced, choosing his path meticulously. He deliberately avoided established trails, forging his own route as he hugged the shadows. Entering the valley, he crept along the underbrush, descending the slope towards the stream. As he moved, an unsettling sensation of being observed pricked at him. His eyes darted left and right, senses strained, maintaining a heightened state of alert. Grr! A low, rustling growl assaulted his ears, instantly drawing his attention. He looked forward, his eyes fixing on the source, a large, dark-furred wolf, nearly a meter tall, its form enveloped in a peculiar aura. Asra, what is that? He mentally questioned, never breaking eye contact with the creature. Though physically larger, he perceived an unsettling sense of peril emanating from the wolf, an ironhide wolf, a significantly rarer variant of the common iron wolf. Asra's voice chimed. They possess the innate ability to fortify their hides to astonishing degrees, rendering older specimens exceptionally difficult to subdue. Their pelts are highly prized among intelligent races for crafting potent defensive armaments. This particular individual appears to have only recently attained Sky-class status, an admirable achievement for its age. Dorian's brow furrowed. Such a beast presented an ideal candidate for his next evolution, yet it also seemed considerably more powerful than he was presently. What are my odds of defeating it in direct combat right now? He inquired. Ozra remained silent. Dorian mentally rolled his eyes, then cautiously began to retreat. He had 2 absorption uses remaining and could assimilate the wolf's bloodline, but he resolved to conserve them for more critical situations. He would return when fully grown, intending to defeat the wolf through natural combat first. He slowly continued his retreat. The wolf did not pursue, its gleaming black eyes simply tracking his movements. Just as Dorian completed his withdrawal and prepared to turn, he heard a sound he hadn't encountered in a very long time. A human voice. Wood magic. Goliath's fist. Dorian watched, wide-eyed, as a colossal fist of dark, obsidian-like wood materialized above the ironhide wolf, then plunged down upon it. The wooden fist manifested from thin air, descending with such speed and force that the Sky-class beast had no chance to evade. The ensuing impact caused the fist to detonate, splintering into shards of woody shrapnel that burst outwards. The wolf emitted an angry whimper as the fist smashed directly onto its head, driving it into the earth. The attack had caught it utterly by surprise, its focus entirely fixed on the red salamander before it. The ironhide wolf remained prone after the blow, lying motionless on the ground. Dorian scurried to the nearest tree, pressing himself as close to the ground as possible, observing the unfolding scene. Gradually, several human figures emerged, stepping into the forested clearing near the fallen wolf. 3 were armored warriors in dark leather, carrying swords. Another resembled a forest ranger, while the last wore refined grey silk robes. Toldro assessed its condition. Liuzun Robil, the robed man, commanded, gesturing towards the supine wolf. The ranger-like figure advanced swiftly, his steps deliberate yet confident. He knelt beside the wolf, examining it. "It's still alive and in good condition," he reported. As Dorian observed this tableau, a realization struck him. The men weren't speaking English, yet he understood every word. "Osra, how am I understanding them?" he mentally inquired. His worship, in his infinite wisdom, foresaw the linguistic diversity across the 30,000 realms. Osra's cool, concise voice replied. Consequently, he inscribed the knowledge of 6 widespread languages, alongside approximately 300 lesser tongues, directly into the soul spell matrix of every member of the flock, including yourself, firstborn. Your comprehension and capacity for speech are thus innate, contingent upon manifesting a body capable of vocalization. Dorian's internal smile widened at the revelation. He'd always yearned to learn a foreign language back on Earth. Now, that wish seemed to have been granted, albeit in an unexpected manner. He quickly banished the fleeting memories of Earth, images of his parents and family, from his mind. He couldn't afford such distractions now. "Excellent," William exclaimed, a broad smile spreading across his face. They had not only successfully located the ironhide wolf they sought, but had also managed to capture it easily and alive, exploiting the element of surprise. Ironhide wolves were essentially living treasures, especially those that could be raised. His fortunes, it seemed, were dramatically improving. Pursuing the rumors of this particular wolf had proven profoundly worthwhile. Wood magic, sealing bell. His fingers twisted into an intricate gesture, conjuring a massive, 3-meter-tall, 2-meter-wide bell into existence. With another wave of his hand, several animated wooden tentacles manifested. These tendrils seized the unconscious wolf, unceremoniously depositing it into the voluminous wooden bell. The bell instantly sealed itself, save for a few small vents allowing air exchange. "Sir?" Captain Lancaster interjected, stepping forward as William secured their quarry. "Should we address that red salamander to the south?" he inquired, a vague gesture accompanying his words. Dorian froze, daring not to stir. How had they seen him? He'd been concealed, and quite effectively so. The dense cover of the tree and underbrush should have rendered him almost invisible, if not entirely. William's gaze flickered directly to Dorian's position, lingering on his hiding spot for a beat. It's not even a Sky-class beast. I'll simply dispose of it." The wizard clasped his hands, preparing to weave another spell. Dorian didn't hesitate. He spun and fled instantly, sprinting with all his might. He blazed through the forest glade, hurtling past trees, a surge of raw fear igniting in his heart. William stared, surprised, after the retreating red salamander. Did it sense our intent? Most unusual. No matter. He glanced at the hovering bell with a satisfied expression. "Let's return to your city." Dorian ran for a full 30 seconds, reaching the forested valley's edge. He concealed himself among a cluster of large boulders at the tree line, his body heaving. Adrenaline, or its salamander equivalent, surged through him, causing him to tremble as he fought for composure. Magic clearly existed in this world, he mused, replaying the events. It was the only plausible explanation for the animated wood. This wasn't entirely unexpected. His own soul spell matrix and the flame claw's ability were proof enough of magic's reality. Humans, though, they dungulosidialons. Those were the first humans I've encountered. The full weight of this realization sent a shiver through Dorian, a peculiar blend of happiness and disappointment stirring within him. Perhaps I should have remained and attempted communication? He pondered briefly, then instantly discarded the notion. Drawing undue attention now would be unwise. That human had effortlessly subdued a Sky-class Ironhide wolf, a feat far beyond Dorian's current capabilities. Lingering would have placed him entirely at the man's mercy. He sighed, stretching his claws. His imperative was clear. He needed to become strong. Strong enough to ensure his safety and travel unhindered, and perhaps, eventually, discover a path back to Earth. He remained concealed for several more minutes, ensuring the human's departure. After a final pause, he emerged from his hiding place and crept back into the valley, moving meticulously from tree to tree, careful to suppress any extraneous sounds. Gradually, his tension eased, and a sense of normalcy returned. The chirping and rustling of wildlife filled the air, making the forest feel almost like one on Earth, save for the distant, booming roars of colossal beasts. Soon, Dorian made his way to the valley's lowest point, seeking the darkest pit. After 10 fruitless minutes traversing the valley, he strode to the stream, bisecting the forested glade, kicking a rock in frustration. He watched it skip across the water, smashing downstream and startling several schools of fish. From the corner of his eye, he noticed something else stir in the river, disturbed by the fleeing fish. A familiar silhouette. Another brown treasure clam. To confirm, he consulted Osra, who validated his intuition. He stared at the clam, intrigued. "Osra, this is the second clam I've encountered. Aren't they supposed to be rare?" he mentally asked the genie. The genie paused before replying. "Brown treasure clams are inherently drawn to fate and fated objects. The previous specimen you discovered was likely attracted by his worship's manipulation of destiny to guide you." This current one probably bears a connection to the first. Dorian's eyes widened at the implication, his gaze sharpening on the clam. It scuttled along the stream bed, gliding through the crystalline water. Observing its movements, a new possibility occurred to him, one he hadn't considered before. Perhaps the valley's deepest pit wasn't within the forest, but submerged within the stream itself. He ambled forward, stealthily trailing the clam as it distanced itself from the scattering fish, meticulously noting its progress. If it truly was drawn to fate, then its resting place might very well be in proximity to the deceased wizard's hidden treasure. Startled by the fish, the clam seemed determined to escape and conceal itself. It navigated the stream bed for several minutes, drawing Dorian nearly 100 meters downstream. He followed patiently, observing its every shift. Just as the stream curved into a bend, the brown treasure clam abruptly vanished from his sight. Dorian lunged forward, his eyes keenly scanning the section of the stream where the clam had disappeared. He waded into the water, scrutinizing the area. Indeed, after a few seconds of careful searching, Dorian discerned an opening in the stream bank. The aperture was cleverly concealed, invisible from outside the water, yet amply sized, approximately 2 meters wide and 1.5 meters tall. He crawled closer, extending a claw. He felt solid rock, then empty space beyond. He eyed the opening once more before shrugging. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Dorian drew a deep breath, then dove beneath the surface, pulling himself through the hidden opening. His underwater vision was exceptional, his eyes swiftly adjusting to the dim, subaquatic atmosphere as he peered within. The aperture led into a long, sloping cave tunnel, angled gently downwards. The water level inside was placid, neither flowing in nor out, but held in perfect equilibrium. Dorian just barely glimpsed the brown treasure clam disappearing around a bend at the far end of the visible passage. He surfaced briefly for another deep breath, then submerged again, propelling himself rapidly through the passageway. As a red salamander, he could easily hold his breath for several minutes. If he found nothing within the first minute, he resolved to abort and devise a different strategy. Despite the subterranean environment, a faint luminescence emanated from a glowing moss or algae covering the cave floor. Dorian traversed the tunnel swiftly, reaching its terminus in a matter of seconds. Rounding the corner, he saw what appeared to be a large pool, a layer of water giving way to open air above. A smile touched his lips as he paddled up a few feet. "Whoo!" He exhaled, then inhaled deeply, taking in the underground chamber. It was a long, yet confined, cavern. The glowing moss from the water extended to the cave's ceiling, illuminating the space. The rough grey rock ceiling hovered about 1 meter high. Approximately 2/3 of the room sloped upwards, remaining dry, while the remaining third was submerged. In one corner of the dry, slanted portion, Dorian discerned the brown treasure clam, attempting to bury itself amidst a collection of white rocks. He blinked, scrutinizing the rocks, then a chilling realization dawned. What he'd perceived as a rock pile was, in fact, a haphazard clump of bones. He shivered, recognizing their vaguely human form. Beneath them, partially obscured by grey patches, lay a faded brown pouch. This, in all probability, was the remains of the deceased mage mentioned in the ring's message. A bone fractured audibly as the brown treasure clam shifted, trying to burrow deeper beneath the remains. Dorian frowned at the sight, then advanced, readying his claws. He channeled energy from his soul, activating his flaming claws ability as he moved. First, he would deal with the clam. Then, he would investigate for any remaining treasure. Far removed from Dorian's present reality, a man sat solitary in a vacant throne room, enthroned upon a colossal glowing green seat. The throne itself, easily 3 meters tall, floated mid-air, adorned with intricate carvings depicting wizards casting spells and battling fantastical beasts. Various gems embedded along its sides imbued it with an aura of immense power and opulence. The chamber contained nothing but the throne and a lengthy red carpet leading to it. The austere grey stone of the floor and walls offered a stark contrast to the throne's elaborate grandeur. A large, luminous yellow sphere, suspended near the ceiling, provided the room's sole illumination. The man on the throne appeared to be middle-aged, with short, greying hair and a bristly black beard. His violet eyes gleamed with an unusual intensity, his strong jaw and refined nose contributing to a masculine, handsome visage. A long crimson scar slashed from his right cheek down onto his neck, accentuating his muscular shoulders. He was clad in a simple, form-fitting white robe, embroidered with a black insignia depicting a wizard's spellbook. His imposing height, 6 feet and 5 inches, gave him a towering presence even in a seated position. A slender, unadorned golden crown rested upon his head. The man sighed, his gaze sweeping the empty room. He then turned his head to face the chamber's sole entrance, a massive, 5-meter-tall set of stone doors directly opposite the throne. "Enter, Cassiera," he commanded. His voice, rich and warm, resonated with a subtle tremor of authority and immeasurable power. At his utterance, the colossal doors swung open instantly. A beautiful, blonde-haired woman strode down the carpet towards the throne, her green eyes and shimmering lips perfectly complementing her long, silky tresses. Her figure was lean and athletic, its curves subtly revealed by her form-fitting blue dress. "Your Majesty." Cassiera's voice was serene as she halted 10 meters from the throne, executing a deep bow. A small blue hair ornament glinted in her blonde locks. "What does the Fate Magic Department's preliminary report indicate?" The man on the throne waved a dismissive hand, a bored expression on his face. The Fate Magic Department constituted one of the 108 magical divisions within the Borel Autarchy, a colossal organization commanding over 10,000 worlds. Cassiera trembled faintly as he addressed her, her eyes alight with adoration. "Disturbances in fate have been detected across a total of 88 distinct worlds," she reported. "Of these affected realms, 32 fall under our direct control. Each disruption has been turbulent, and while the precise events remain unverified, our auguries suggest that, if left unaddressed, the consequences could manifest as a catastrophe on the scale of the Yale demon invasion." The man on the throne straightened, his eyes widening almost imperceptibly. The Yale demon invasion, a calamity 3 centuries prior, had claimed over 40 billion human lives across more than 500 planets. That inexplicable incursion of potent, intelligent beasts via various world bridges had occurred in the wake of the Graal Alliance's collapse, a formidable coalition of sentient creatures spanning over 7,000 worlds, which had only re-established itself a century later. A catastrophe of such magnitude would unleash devastating consequences, potentially reshaping the very foundations of the autarchy. A glint of keen interest sparked in the man's eyes. "Very interesting." He snapped his fingers twice. Instantly, 2 figures, cloaked and masked in black, materialized from thin air. "Taran, issue a decree to all 108 departments, mandating a full-scale investigation of the 32 affected worlds under our jurisdiction. David, confer with the Foreign Ambassador Department to initiate diplomatic overtures to the independent planets, apprising them of the situation and tendering our aid. Source any necessary information from the Fate Department." The man gestured dismissively as he dispatched 2 of his most trusted subordinates to action, a faint smile playing on his lips. He then turned his gaze back to the blue-clad woman, who still regarded him with adoration. "Cassiera, your Fate Department has performed admirably. Inform me of any further discoveries." He offered her a warm nod, a gesture of dismissal from the throne room. She retreated reluctantly, bowing deeply before her departure. Arthur Tellman, the Wizard King of the Borel Autarchy, and unequivocally the most powerful human in existence, surveyed the now empty throne room once more, a smile gracing his features. "It seems things are about to become interesting." Having savored the final morsel of the brown treasure clam, Dorian clicked his tongue in satisfaction. He expelled a few lingering shell fragments, his gaze sweeping over the cavern. Cornering the clam had been a simple task. Once trapped, it offered little resistance. However, unlike its predecessor, this particular mollusk yielded no rare trinkets, a minor disappointment. A mental scan of his soul spell matrix revealed a notable advancement in his growth. Red salamander, growth stage, 4/5, mature adult, growth progress, 757/956. He was nearing the fifth, fully mature stage. These clams, it seemed, proved surprisingly nourishing, at least in terms of raw energy. Another internal notification surfaced. Brown treasure clam, growth stage 2/2, venom state, stored amount, 63 milladils. He'd accumulated more of the clam's venom. Having no immediate application for it, he mentally catalogued it for later, his focus shifting to the immediate environment, the bleached bones of a long-dead mage and the leather pouch nestled beneath them. His first instinct was to retrieve the pouch, assuming it held any valuables. Though his sense of touch was less refined than in his human days, he felt the coarse, resilient leather as he lifted it. Despite its ancient, withered appearance, the bag remained remarkably tough and undamaged. A clasp secured one end, which he gingerly worked open with his claws, a task less facile without human dexterity. The moment the pouch yielded, a tremor ran through it. A small burst of air unexpectedly jetted forth, and the empty container dropped, lying inert on the ground. Dorian stared, baffled, before slowly picking it up again. This appears to be a damaged storage pouch, pilfered long ago. I detect remnant traces of powerful artifacts and tools that once resided within. The pouch itself seems to have possessed a lock, broken many years past, most likely during its initial looting. Kudmuth Ausra's voice resonated in his mind. The spatial integrity of the pouch collapsed entirely upon your opening it. It seems someone or something cleared out this treasure long before your arrival here. Dorian's spirits plummeted as he stared at the pouch. After such a prolonged journey, the treasure the ring had hinted at was already gone, claimed by another, and seemingly ages ago. He sighed, acknowledging that luck wasn't always on his side. His gaze returned to the bones, inspecting them with a newfound curiosity. They appeared no different from any other ancient skeletal remains, chalk-white and weathered. The mage must have perished here eons ago, and their looters, apparently, hadn't bothered with a burial. Tapping a bone with his claw, Dorian decided he would at least grant the mage a proper resting place, a small gesture of gratitude for the energy the magical ring had provided him. The instant his claw made contact, his soul spell matrix flared. An abrupt tremor seized Dorian, sending him stumbling backward, a wave of fear washing over him. The bones before him pulsed with an overwhelming aura of power and majesty. Though he experienced it for only a heartbeat, the sensation nearly caused him to collapse from sheer terror. You have uncovered the remains of a near-ascendant human corpse. A remnant spiritualized aura still imbues the bones, but the soul spell matrix and bloodline have long since departed the body. Fido's voice informed him, calm and precise within his thoughts. Dorian regarded the bones with profound awe. The one do not, even in his robust red salamander form, merely touching the long-dead body of such a potent human for an instant had been enough to almost render him unconscious. The apex of strength in this reality, he realized, far surpassed anything conceivable back on Earth. Can I absorb it? Or somehow make use of it? He inquired mentally of Ozra, his gaze fixed intently on the bones. The genie in his head paused before responding. A full absorption is unfeasible. However, by utilizing the intricate enchantments, His Holiness embedded within your soul spell matrix, it may be possible to condense and store the remnant spiritualized aura. Be warned, though, that this process will cause the aura to diminish from half-step ascendancy class down to the middle of king class. To you, the genie continued, the aura itself will confer no actual strength or power. but it could serve as a formidable deterrent. Your physical capabilities will remain unchanged, and you will not have genuinely attained king-class status. Dorian's eyes gleamed with excitement at this news. This was excellent. The most powerful creature he'd encountered in these mountains had been Grandmaster class. A king-class beast stood 2 full classes above that. While he still grasped only the rudiments of how these classes operated, he felt certain that possessing such an aura would be akin to an ultimate safeguard against mortal danger. "I want to store it immediately," he declared, stepping closer to the bones. It seemed his luck hadn't entirely run dry after all. In an instant, a complex array of symbols blazed before Dorian's vision. Hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands of intricate characters interlocked, weaving into a mysterious, elaborate pattern. Swiftly, these symbols coalesced into a long, undulating circle that descended and enveloped the white bones. He watched raptly as they settled, cloaking every inch of the ancient corpse. An enormous burst of light rocked the cavern, momentarily blinding Dorian as the bones began to clatter and vibrate violently. The next second, as he blinked his eyes open with effort, the bones had vanished without a trace. A profound weariness descended upon him, crashing down relentlessly. Within his soul, the golden orb of his soul spell matrix pulsed. Abruptly, next to that radiant golden sphere, a much smaller, crimson bead materialized. As these events transpired, Dorian collapsed to the ground, sleep claiming him as the immense effort of absorbing the aura drained far too much of his vital energy. The 30,000 worlds comprised the entirety of existence. Each one was a vast and complex entity. Some were verdant paradises of trees, mountains, rivers, and valleys, lush forests bordered by oceans teeming with life. Others were desolate and hostile, consumed by magma, fire, death, and ruin. Yet, 2 characteristics were common to every world. First, the mysterious laws of magic ensured the constant generation of rare magical herbs or plants, coexisting with powerful or enigmatic beasts. Second, all these worlds were interconnected by world bridges. World bridges, sometimes referred to as half-worlds themselves, were colossal landmasses, typically thousands of miles long and hundreds to thousands of miles wide, enclosed by spatial tunnels. They served as physical conduits linking one world to another. Incredibly enigmatic, they were a popular subject of study for many wizards specializing in space magic, space-time magic, or their various subdisciplines. Every world possessed at least one world bridge connection. These world bridges resembled regular worlds in that magical flora and fauna thrived there, and numerous beasts and races made them their home. However, they were considerably more perilous than standard worlds due to the nature of the surrounding spatial tunnels. Naturally occurring spatial storms presented a rare but terrifying hazard capable of obliterating tens of thousands of lives in mere seconds. 3 such world bridges connected to the planet Hasnorth, where Dorian now resided. Presently, an immense black dragon soared through one of these world bridges. This leviathan was gargantuan, stretching over a mile in length and half a mile in width. A closer inspection would reveal that the dragon's scales shimmered and vibrated with an unusual power. A more perceptive and skilled observer might even realize that this colossal beast was no creature of flesh and blood, but a construct born purely of magic, an enormous black dragon composed entirely of black lightning. The dragon flew high, 20 miles above the spatial tunnel, bordering the chaotic expanse of untamed space, a region where spatial storms rendered all life impossible. Occasionally, spatial fractures would manifest, snapping towards the dragon, drawn by its concentrated magical essence. Each time, however, the fracture would dissipate and halt, just a few dozen meters away, unable to breach the dragon's aura. Perched atop this colossal dragon was a large black platform, where several dozen individuals reclined on various magically conjured couches and chairs. Most of these men and women were clad in grey robes or leather outfits, emblazoned with an insignia of black lightning. A few others wore blue garments or outfits, devoid of any symbol. 10 mages were seated in a complex formation, black energy swirling in a circle above them before streaming downwards, connecting with the immense black dragon and invigorating it. One man, in particular, commanded attention, standing at the platform's edge, his gaze fixed on the surrounding void. He possessed long, untamed black hair and a muscular physique. A strong chin and jaw complemented his rugged smile, contributing to his gruff demeanor. Small black energy particles seemed to orbit him, lending him an awe-inspiring presence. A woman in blue leather attire approached, her long red hair swaying gently. She nodded at the man. Her serene face and piercing green eyes, though not conventionally beautiful, exuded an imposing aura. "Congratulations on your breakthrough, Hadrian. To have attained Lord Class as a wizard at only 26 years of age, few can truly rival such an achievement." Her voice was cool, resonant with underlying power. Hadrian merely shrugged, his calm eyes still fixed on the space beyond. A faint breeze, a product of the energy swirling around him, ghosted by. Yet no ambient air could penetrate the magical barrier emanated by the colossal dragon which shielded its riders. "The Black Lightning Department has always attracted exceptional talent." "I am merely slightly more fortunate than most," he replied, his voice rough, as if unaccustomed to prolonged conversation. The woman shrugged in turn, her gaze unwavering. "Be that as it may, you are still the youngest Black Lightning wizard to reach the Lord Class in the past 500 years. A truly impressive feat. I've reviewed the records of your battle with the Zell-sundering Titan, a conflict that obliterated over a dozen mountains." The man gave another shrug, his composure undisturbed, validation unregun. He turned briefly to face her before responding, "We should reach Hasnorth in 3 days' time. Inform your fate magicians to prepare for foretellings. Our objective is to hunt down the anomaly before the other departments arrive." We were fortunate to be in the vicinity when the orders came through. Dorian's return to consciousness was sluggish, his eyes blinking groggily. He struggled to his feet, scanning his surroundings. He remained within the underground cavern. His glance drifted to the corner where the discarded pouch lay. The chalk-white bones, however, were nowhere to be seen. He touched his own body, closing his eyes. In his mind's eye, he visualized his soul, a capability that had become second nature to him in this world, despite never being formally instructed. His soul manifested as a soft, luminous white bubble. Within it, the golden sphere, adorned with countless symbols, represented his soul spell matrix. Adjacent to it now floated a much smaller, red bead one he hadn't observed before. "You have successfully stored the aura of the fallen human, albeit degraded to the middle of king class. The aura itself is not permanent and will be slightly expended each time you activate it. The amount you have stored is sufficient for 4 or 5 activations." Thor's Ozra's voice echoed in his mind, its tone coolly informative. Dorian's lips curved into a smile, shaking off the last vestiges of sleep. He then turned towards the exit and swam his way out of the cave. Emerging from the underground chamber, he surveyed the night sky, a faint hint of concern on his face. Nighttime was invariably the most perilous hour to be abroad. The nocturnal firmament of this world differed starkly from that of his old home Earth. Instead of myriad stars, a single vast pale white moon dominated the sky, identical in size and scale to the sun that presided over daylight. His stomach rumbled, a stark reminder of his acute hunger. Absorbing that powerful aura had demanded an enormous expenditure of energy, and he urgently needed to find sustenance. As this thought coursed through his mind, his eyes drifted to a cluster of fish resting in the nearby river. After satisfying his hunger with several ordinary low-class fish, Dorian stealthily returned to his underground cavern, choosing to spend the night there. The hiding spot was remarkably secluded, and, to date, the safest refuge he had discovered, far more secure than merely concealed within a tree. Despite having been unconscious for several hours, Dorian readily drifted back into sleep, still recovering from his profound exhaustion. Several hours elapsed, and soon morning dawned once more. Sunlight streamed into the valley, filtering through the dense canopy of trees. Dorian cast one last wistful glance around before turning and heading back towards the forest where he had initially awakened. His journey proved uneventful. He encountered a few Earth-class beasts, none of which posed a significant threat. His luck held, allowing him to bypass any of the truly formidable creatures inhabiting the mountains, and he emerged unscathed. He also managed to procure another magic herb and root, devouring it greedily and feeling a surge of invigorating energy flow through him. Red salamander, growth stage. 4/5, mature adult growth progress, 812/956. He was swiftly nearing the final threshold of energy required to fully evolve into a red salamander. He nodded sharply, pleased with his progress. According to Azra, the power structure of this world was a blend of simplicity and complexity. The primary distinction between each class centered on a beast's soul and its corresponding soul spell matrix. A Sky-class beast, for instance, possessed a soul spell matrix developed to the Sky stage. An Earth-class beast's matrix resided at the Earth stage, a Master-class beast's at the Master stage, and so forth. Soul spell matrices were the conduits through which beasts drew energy to manifest potent abilities, such as Dorian's flame claws, to regenerate from injuries, and to amplify their physical strength and resilience. The disparity between an Earth-class beast and a Sky-class beast was not excessively vast. A Sky-class beast would typically exhibit greater physical prowess and enhanced regenerative capabilities, but the gap remained relatively minor. At such lower echelons, the energy reserves within a soul spell matrix were simply too limited to exert a truly profound effect. Indeed, Dorian's inherent regenerative abilities as a red salamander already surpassed what he could achieve using his Earth-class soul spell matrix. The divergence between a Sky-class beast and a Master-class beast, however, was substantial by a factor of at least 3. The difference between a Master-class and a Grandmaster class escalated further by a factor of at least 6. At successively higher levels, these disparities became even more extreme. Legends whispered of beasts at the pinnacle, the Ascendancy class, possessing the ability to regenerate their entire bodies from a single molecule, even after total destruction. At a minimum, Dorian realized he needed to reach Grandmaster class as swiftly as possible to ensure his survival in this region. Thankfully, he already had a strategy in place to achieve just that. Departing the mountains proved considerably easier than entering them, and he made excellent time. By midday, he had arrived near the area where he had originally materialized. As a red salamander, he seemed to have acquired an innate sense of direction, which proved immensely helpful. With the full culmination of a red salamander's growth imminent, it was time to select a new beast into which to evolve. Osra, can you provide more information on the bloodlines I currently possess? Please exclude all fish and clam bloodlines. He had absorbed the brown treasure clam's bloodline, but found its growth potential disappointingly weak. As for the fish he'd consumed, none offered anything beyond ordinary bloodlines. Certainly, Grosra's voice replied in his mind. A moment later, a mental screen materialized.
Alicia, mayun na Houston. Might you know you that my new times.
Bloodline stored, red salamander, forested ancient snake, hollow lizard, degraded, mere dragon, degraded. The red salamander possesses a maximum growth potential reaching the Sky stage. The forested ancient snake peaks at the Earth stage. The hollow lizard's potential extends to the Sky stage, while the mere dragon's potential reaches the Grandmaster stage. Dorian's eyes lit up. One of his bloodlines, the one with dragon in its name, held Grandmaster potential. He frowned, however, recalling that the bloodline was noted as degraded. Osra, How much more of the bloodline would I need to gather for you to fully recover it and allow me to utilize it? He inquired. Osra remained silent for a moment before responding, based on the amount typically found in a red salamander's, of approximately 18 more red salamanders of at least Earth stage, roughly 13 if chosen from the Sky stage. Dorian's eyes glinted as he nodded. This made perfect sense. He then sniffed the air, a decisive resolve settling over him. It was time to hunt. Several days elapsed. During this period, Dorian underwent a profound transformation, not only in his physical strength, but also in his mental fortitude. Red salamanders were a ubiquitous presence in this section of the forest. It was no accident he had encountered one on his very first day. All the salamanders in this area, it seemed, shared similar bloodline origins, including the degraded Maya dragon bloodline. The first time he attempted to hunt one, Dorian had narrowly escaped with his life. Despite ambushing the salamander from above, the creature had managed to embed its claws deeply into his chest, almost tearing him asunder. Although inhabiting the body of a red salamander, Dorian at his core remained a human being, lacking most of the beast's natural instincts and combat prowess. He had, however, activated his flame claws ability, decisively turning the tide and striking down the salamander. He was careful not to incinerate the body, preserving its blood for absorption. Not all red salamanders, it appeared, possessed the flame claws ability. The grievous wounds he sustained vanished almost instantaneously as he assimilated enough energy to evolve into the final growth stage of a red salamander, becoming an elder red salamander. His body now spanned a full 2 meters, encased in heavy, plated red scales, with a prominent line of sharp spikes running down his spine. His claws had extended by 1 inch, his teeth by ½ an inch. Physically, he was far stronger, capable of snapping a 2-foot-thick tree trunk with a single swipe of his claws. He perceived a slight enhancement in his regenerative ability, complementing his natural healing as a red salamander. He felt confident he could now defeat 2 of his former selves in combat. This significant change in physique and strength deepened his understanding of the difference between Sky-class and Earth-class beasts. After the initial kill and subsequent evolution, Dorian found eliminating other red salamanders considerably easier. He also progressively hardened himself to the violence, becoming inured to its necessity for survival. It was exceedingly rare for any red salamander to live long enough to reach the elder salamander stage. Before Dorian, no beast possessed the unique ability to directly evolve into its next growth stage by simply devouring another creature or magical herbs. Instead, they had to patiently await the gradual accumulation of time for their soul spell matrix to slowly strengthen, maintaining their peak condition. Over the next 3 days, Dorian successfully hunted down 18 Earth-class red salamanders. He did not, however, manage to locate any Sky-class elder red salamanders. Red salamander growth stage, 5/5, elder salamander growth progress, 2313/02. He mentally reviewed his growth progress, nodding approvingly. The surplus energy accumulated from hunting and dispatching various red salamanders had been efficiently stored within his soul spell matrix, none of it wasted. Consuming and absorbing energy from other beasts differed from eating magic herbs in that he could continue the process repeatedly. When he had attempted to consume a second magic herb while on the mountain, he had been overcome by an intense nausea, as if already utterly engorged, and further ingestion would be perilous. "Osra, I'm ready." Having dispatched the last required salamander, Dorian had opted for sleep, the exhaustion from tirelessly scouring the forest for his quarry finally taking its toll. It was now the morning of the 4th day since his return to the forest. The Maya dragon bloodline has been fully restored. Furthermore, you possess a sufficient quantity to successfully evolve into a first-stage Maya dragon. Do you wish to evolve? Osra's voice chimed in his head. Yes, chum, that Dorian's eyes flashed. A brilliant light enveloped him, and he abruptly found himself in a misty white landscape. the familiar evolution space he had encountered before. A luminous sphere appeared before him, taking the form of Ozra. The Maya dragon is a creature renowned for its lustrous green scales. It is a draconic being possessing a true draconic form. As a fully grown adult, its height reaches approximately 4 meters, not including its flight-incapable wings. At its highest potential growth stage, it attains the Grandmaster class. A vivid visualization of the Maya dragon materialized before Dorian. He grinned, his heart pounding in excitement as he beheld it. An actual dragon. Evolve me into it immediately. Absorbing Maya dragon bloodline. Body reconstruction in progress. Of 1,000 miles from Dorian's current location, an enormous world bridge connected the planet Has North to the planet Mesa. The appearance of a world bridge interfacing with a planet was a mystifying sight, resembling a colossal, 300-mile-wide pillar of land soaring upwards into a high-altitude portal of spatial storms. Gravity operated in an enigmatic fashion around this nexus. Instead of simply falling downwards, gravity shifted as one traversed the immense landmass. Downzorbers, one could walk in a straight line towards the bridge, then directly upwards onto it, and the sensation would feel entirely normal. Down on the bridge, always oriented towards its central axis, regardless of one's standing point. This particular world bridge was characterized by several vast forests and an immense river that flowed continuously down to the planet and extended across its surface. These sprawling forest tracts were dominated by beasts, designating them as danger zones on both the planet and the bridge. The enormous river, however, served as the heartland for one of the 3 great powers on the Has North continent, the Obsidia River Empire. The capital of the Obsidia River Empire was situated mere miles from one side of the world bridge, the side featuring the nearly 80-mile-wide river. The capital city, Obsidia, was a colossal metropolis spanning a full 26 miles, almost a small nation in itself, perched alongside the immense Obsidia River that flowed up the world bridge. It teemed with over 3 million human inhabitants, crowded into various shops, homes, a few castles and palaces, and the outer villages existing at the capital's fringes. Obsidia functioned as one of the planet's primary trade hubs and one of the few places where one could find trading caravans that embarked on journeys to other planets. The leader of the Obsidia River Empire was the formidable Lord-class wizard, Henry Mallion, a master of high-water magic. A full contingent of 8 Grandmaster-class wizards served as his royal wizards, solidifying the Obsidia River Empire's position as one of the most potent forces on the planet. It was a sprawling dominion extending over 3,000 miles. Currently, however, the capital of Obsidia trembled in palpable fear, for overhead, an enormous dragon composed of black lightning had appeared, radiating an incredibly menacing aura. Hadrian smiled, his eyes aloof, as he looked down upon the fear-stricken capital. We have arrived. Kalinked. Body reconstruction complete. Body reconstruction complete. Dodian's vision blurred as he exited the mental evolution space, flashes of light momentarily blinding him. A profound heaviness settled in his head, as if he had just assimilated a vast trove of information. He blinked, cautiously surveying his surroundings. The world around him seemed to have undergone a profound transformation. The colors of the towering verdant trees were richer, the sounds of the bustling forest louder, the fresh scent of the wilderness stronger. The world had become more vibrant, more potent, more alive. Something, however, felt distinctly odd. His perception of this newly vivid world, it felt slightly askew. The tall trees he observed now appeared gargantuan. He swiveled his head, confusion mounting, until his gaze dropped to his own body and realization dawned. It wasn't the forest that had grown, he was the one who had shrunk. His form had shifted into that of a small, green-scaled lizard, complete with a pair of tiny, almost ornamental wings. His hide was leathery and scaled, gleaming with an attractive, dark luster. He measured roughly 1/2 meter in length, possessing an adorably proportioned face and miniature claws. His eyes, a deep gray, shimmered with a mysterious inner light. Mare dragon, growth stage, 1/4, mare hatchling, growth progress, 2,313/2000 Ibikidam. He examined his status display mentally. Noticing his growth progress had exceeded the required value, he also observed that this new threshold was significantly higher than that demanded by the red salamander. Osra, why haven't I evolved to the second growth stage? He queried. Following an evolution, your soul requires a brief period to adapt to its new form. Your soul is currently at the Sky class stage. Therefore, you will require approximately 30 hours for your body to fully acclimatize to this form. The stronger your soul, the shorter the adaptation period. Los Osra's reply was cool and concise. The genie continued, once your soul has adapted, you may freely switch between any forms you have previously evolved from and your present form. Dorian licked his lips, noting that his tongue was considerably longer than it had been in his red salamander form. Thanks, Asran had replied, mentally shrugging. It seemed he would simply have to be patient. To then sten. He ambled over to a tree and tapped it several times. His tiny claws easily pierced the bark. However, using only his physical strength, he couldn't snap the tree in half as he had when he was an elder red salamander. He felt he could manage it with exertion, but it would be a close thing. Though his soul spell matrix had attained Sky class, it couldn't entirely compensate for the limitations of his current body. Osra, what class am I currently? He mentally inquired of the genie in his soul spell matrix. Mere dragons possess 4 distinct stages of growth. A mere hatchling is typically considered mortal class. However, with your Sky class soul spell matrix augmenting your physical form, you are presently an Earth class beast. Upon achieving the second stage of growth, you should become a full-fledged Sky class beast. Lilnamid's Ausra responded. All right, Linlani shrugged. It seemed there was nothing immediate he could do about it. He truly would just have to endure the 30-hour waiting period. Well, there was one thing he could do. His eyes gleamed. He could still hunt and absorb more energy to add to his growth progress. Lord Henry. Tyrell Hadrian acknowledged the man before him by his class title, his voice tinged with respect. Black energy subtly coalesced around his head, vaguely forming a halo as he spoke. Lord Hadrian. I have heard much of your heroic exploits across the worlds of Mesor, Numal, and Telantris. What, may I ask, brings you here to Hasnorth, and specifically to my humble kingdom? An elderly man, resplendent in expensive silk and lace-black robes, sat upon a grand throne, observing the wizard. A palpable sense of authority emanated from him as he spoke, his wizened eyes gleaming. A short crop of white hair and a very long white beard augmented his majestic appearance. A glowing blue crown, seemingly wrought from water, rested upon his forehead. This was Lord Class Wizard Henry Malleon, the sovereign of the Obsidia River Empire. His voice blended respect for the young talent before him with the inherent strength of his own age, experience, and might. The throne was situated in a vast hall where several dozen brilliant pillars carved from some blue stone supported a magnificently painted ceiling, depicting an enormous river winding through mountains. The hall had been cleared in anticipation of Hadrian's arrival. Only he, a few of his subordinates, the Fate Department wizards they had partnered with, and a few elder men standing near the throne-bound ruler remained. I will not mince words. Hadrian's voice was gruff, as if unaccustomed to social interaction. His Highness Telmon has instructed all departments to investigate anomalous signals in fate that have manifested in various locations. One such anomaly appeared here on Hasnorth. Drachnald Hadrian gestured behind him towards a plain-faced woman standing with several blue-robed figures. Lara Consta, a Grandmaster-class wizard specializing in fate magic. Lara nodded subtly, confirming, the Fate Department has pinpointed the occurrences on Hasnorth to the western region of your empire. The ruler of the Obsidia River Empire blinked, his eyes widening slightly. If this was a directive from Wizard King Telman, It was unequivocally not something his empire could afford to disregard. "We will of course cooperate with His Highness Telmon," the Obsidia River Emperor stated, a faint note of shock lingering in his voice. Behind him, several elderly robed men reeled, staring agape at Hadrian. Hadrian faintly discerned that they were all respectably powerful wizards, at least Grandmaster class, not insignificant for a kingdom on a minor world. Hadrian simply nodded, having expected no less. A kingdom on a minor world like Hasnorth would never dare defy the Wizard King's decree. He turned his attention to Lara behind him. Lara stepped fully forward, her eyes placid. "After consulting with Fate, we have formulated a plan we wish to implement. We have 9 masterclass Fate wizards here who will commence immediate foretellings to pinpoint the specific areas affected by Fate. However, due to the inherent general nature of reading Fate, we respectfully request your cooperation in expanding a search net and deploying teams of wizards to contain the anomaly." Dorian's voice was raspy, a sibilant hiss almost incomprehensible as he sat on a boulder, gazing at a distant sunset. "Sour, or sour, or sour, sour, sour." Sour. Tamiled he experimented with the word on his tongue, striving for correct articulation. A triumphant smile spread across his face as he finally managed to pronounce it clearly. "That fruit was sour," he muttered, his tiny draconic form turning to eye a mostly eaten magic herb beside him. It had been an eventful day. After his transformation into a Maya hatchling, he had resolved to hunt beasts for energy storage. Having already largely cleared out the forest where he spawned, he decided to leave, venturing back towards the mountains. The mountain deer he had observed earlier now seemed particularly appetizing in his draconic form. In terms of speed, as a Maya hatchling, he was significantly swifter than he had been as an elder red salamander. He moved deftly through the forest, leaping from tree branch to tree branch. Before he fully mastered this agile movement style, he had, regrettably, collided face first with several branches, and once even a tree trunk. With persistence, however, he had developed a natural fluid gait. Unfortunately, upon reaching the mountains, the only creatures he encountered were a herd of iron oxen traversing a valley, an entire herd of powerful beasts he wasn't keen on fighting yet, and an enormous blue-furred ape which crashed down the mountain in a hurry, fleeing towards the forest. The ape, according to Ozra, was a master-class beast and would easily crush him in a confrontation. Thankfully, he had discovered a blue onion sweetberry on his journey, another type of magic herb that provided a small amount of energy to his reserves while also satiating his hunger. He had returned all the way to the heart of the mountains, to the valley nestled between the 2 shattered peaks. He was currently perched on a random outcropping halfway up one of these fragmented peaks, gazing wistfully at the setting sun. "Muthra, Mothie, 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 Mino Eno," he muttered softly, his voice barely a whisper. Malid dragons, like most draconic creatures in the 30,000 worlds, possessed the capacity for speech, though it evidently required practice. "Fathe, father, Tan," he sighed, a sudden heavy ache settling in his heart. As thoughts of his mother and father surfaced, memories he had suppressed since arriving in this strange world began to flood his mind. Flashes of his previous life played before him. His childhood, growing up as an only child with loving parents. His closest friends, Jessica, Philip, and Tom. Past girlfriends, past loves. Fortunately, he had been single when he had passed into this world. Yet he still grieved for the pain his parents must now be enduring. He wondered if he would ever see them again. Dorian sat in silence, his eyes shimmering as he watched the dying sun. You never truly appreciated what you had until it was gone. He regretted not telling his parents he loved them, just one more time. He regretted not seizing that chance, not asking out the girl of his dreams. He regretted not achieving his goals, earning his final degree, getting into shape. As he lay on that desolate rock, tears began to stream down his face. He rocked back and forth, curling slightly, his small claws clutching at his emerald scales. A breeze rustled through the empty valley as the fading light of day gave way to the encroaching tendrils of night. The chaotic echoes of the forest began to subside, the world transforming into a desolate maze of darkness, an eerie reflection of the once vibrant day. All that remained was a small, green-scaled dragon, gazing at a vast, empty sky. Dorian sighed again, closing his eyes. He took several deep, ragged breaths, shaking away the tears. He opened his eyes anew, a powerful, enthralling light now filling them. What purpose was there in regretting a past that was irrevocably gone? To dwell on regrets was a path fraught with harm, danger, and ultimately death. He could not alter what had already transpired. As far as he knew, there was no returning. The Dorian of that world was dead. He was still Dorian, but a Dorian reborn. In this life, he would have no regrets. He would live to the fullest, whatever that entailed and wherever it led him. Life was simply too precious to be consumed by anything less. He nodded decisively and unfurled his tiny wings, his eyes sharpening as he turned, making his way down the mountain towards the small cave he had discovered earlier, heading off to rest. A slick film of nervous perspiration clung to William Robel's brow as he faced the assembled figures before him, struggling to quell a tremor. His thoughts spun, desperately seeking the moment when events had veered so wildly off course. Only days prior, William had been living through a personal golden age. His triumph in locating and safely returning a Sky-class Ironhide wolf had brought him immense recognition. The Robel family, a formidable power in your city, dominated the Western Obsidia Empire. While their ranks boasted over 100 wizards, more than half were contracted practitioners rather than blood kin. Garibold Robel, the family patriarch, was an imposing Grandmaster-class wizard, a master of earth magic. William, however, was born outside the direct lineage, the illegitimate son of a peripheral family member. His grandfather was Garibold's own brother. Had his contemptible father, Ricard Nobel, sired him with his wife instead of a mere maid, William's position within the family hierarchy would have been considerably more stable. He had, instead, been compelled to fight for every step of his ascent. Now, as a freshly advanced Sky-class mage, his prospects seemed boundless. The capture of the live Ironhide wolf was the crowning achievement, a direct offering to his great-uncle. His animosity towards his father remained undimmed, yet his standing was finally solidified, allowing him to honor the name he bore. His grandfather had even personally embraced him and presented him to the family head. These past few moments, however, had subjected William to an agonizing strain. He had been preparing for a well-earned rest after a celebratory night in town with some newly acquainted cousins, still basking in the glow of his family's acceptance. Upon his return to the family compound, an extensive urban estate comprising numerous residences and structures, he was met not by quiet solitude, but by a formidable assembly of armed warriors and spellcasters. Across the vast 30,000 worlds, power stemmed exclusively from the cultivation of one's soul spell matrix. Wizards represented the zenith of human strength. Yet, the innate talent required for magic was rare. Only 1 in 50 individuals ever progressed beyond the Earth class. Those lacking magical aptitude could instead pursue the path of the warrior. Wizards enhanced their soul spell matrices through repeated spellcasting, their souls gradually aligning with their chosen magical discipline. Each incantation acted as a mystical baptism, strengthening their connection to arcane energies and universal laws. This development could be accelerated with magic herbs or potent elixirs derived from them. Warriors, unable to tap into magic, followed a more arduous route. Through rigorous, relentless physical training, they could force a similar, albeit crude, pseudo-baptism of their soul spell matrix. Combined with magic herbs or crafted potions, this allowed non-magical individuals to achieve considerable might. Nevertheless, the chasm between a warrior and a wizard was profound. It was commonly understood that a wizard of any given class could effortlessly dispatch a dozen warriors of the same tier. A Sky-class wizard, for instance, could easily overcome 12 Sky-class warriors. This disparity only magnified with higher classifications. An angelic-class wizard might utterly dominate an ascendancy-class warrior, despite the latter's superior rank. Warriors were not inherently weak, but magic simply possessed an overwhelming potency. The sight that greeted William upon his arrival home nearly rendered him unconscious with dread. As a Sky-class wizard, his heightened sensitivity to other beings immediately registered the formidable presence of the dozen black-armored warriors. Each exuded an aura of immense physical robustness, indicating at least master-class strength. He might stand a chance against one or two, but a full dozen. For a newly ascended Sky-class mage, it would mean an ignominious end. Mercifully, no attack materialized. The heavily armored warriors remained at a respectful distance, their black plate cladding clanking softly against the massive greatswords strapped to their backs, as a quartet of individuals stepped forward. Foremost was Garibold Robel, the family head, clad in loose brown silk robes, his aged, gaunt face softened by a warm smile. Beside him stood a serene-looking man in tight-fitting grey robes, emblazoned with a black thunderbolt. An corpulent man with a pallid, weary expression wore loose blue robes. And finally, another thin, elderly figure, resplendent in an expensive and intricately embroidered purple shirt and matching robe. William's heart seized. He almost fainted a second time. Every one of them emanated a palpable sense of power, an undeniable aura that proclaimed their superiority to him. The family head initiated the conversation, offering another cordial smile, though a subtle, cautionary glint remained in his gaze. "William, forgive this unannounced intrusion," he said, gesturing vaguely behind him. "King Henry himself has sought our aid in a delicate matter. This is Royal Wizard Iman, a master of space magic." He indicated the elder in the ornate purple attire. "And these two are envoys from the Borel Otraki's Fate Department and Black Lightning Department, Sir Oblong from Fate and Sir Graxital from Black Lightning." The portly, weary-looking Oblong offered William a friendly wave, while Graxital merely gave a curt nod. William forced himself to regain composure. By now, the sheer strangeness of his predicament had dulled his capacity for surprise. "Greetings," William stated, pressing his hands together in a respectful bow, his voice betraying no hint of a tremor. Garibold's approving nod acknowledged his decorum. "How might I be of assistance?" William inquired, a touch of bewilderment in his tone. The rotund wizard, Oblong, stepped forward. "I am a master-class Fate wizard. An entire contingent of my brethren has arrived, accompanied by our sister department, Black Lightning." He gestured towards the taciturn Graxital. "The Obsidia River Empire graciously afforded us access to several of their established spatial ways. Iman's kindness facilitated our journey here, while my colleagues dispersed across the Empire to pinpoint a recent anomaly." Despite Oblong's phrasing, implying the Empire's cooperation was voluntary, the underlying truth was that refusal was not an option. Spatial or space magic was a venerable discipline throughout the 30,000 worlds. While interworld travel or transit within a world bridge remained almost impossible due to spatial interference, localized transport across a single world's surface was entirely feasible. The Obsidia River Empire maintained a sophisticated network of spatial ways, dedicated magical thoroughfares connecting distant points, crafted and sustained by space magic practitioners. Operating such a pathway demanded immense energy and concentration, escalating proportionally with distance. The spatial way through which Oblong, Graxital, and the accompanying dozen Imperial Black Iron Guards had traveled required a Grandmaster-class space wizard to maintain. Imon, being one of only 2 Grandmaster Royal Space Wizards in the Empire, had been specifically assigned to their mission. Oblong continued. My particular foretelling led me directly to your family here. He blinked and rubbed his forehead, as if attempting to banish his exhaustion. Specifically to you, William. William nearly collapsed a 3rd time, his thoughts spiraling. What on earth could have caused such an event? He stammered, at a loss for words. The family head's expression tightened at his faltering. William inhaled deeply, quickly regaining his footing. This situation was unprecedented, but he could not afford to crumble now. Ahem. I have no inkling what this could pertain to. My only recent noteworthy accomplishments involve my breakthrough to Sky Class with wood magic, and the hunting of an ironhide wolf in the southern Nebra Mountains. His voice remained calm and collected, carefully masking his inner turmoil. Yet, contrary to his expectations, Oblong's eyes gleamed with sudden insight, the flesh on his face jiggling as he burst into laughter. Aha! The portly wizard promptly settled onto the ground, clapping his hands together. A cascade of white light erupted around his hands, which he moved in intricate patterns. Soon, this luminous glow enveloped his eyes, lending him an ethereal, mysterious aspect. William swallowed hard, watching the peculiar display. He dimly recognized it. He'd read of wizards who delved into fate magic. Their spells often involved divining the world's fabric, peering into past or future, and unraveling the interconnected threads of destiny. It was a notoriously unreliable and exceptionally difficult magical discipline to master. The Black Lightning Wizard simply observed his colleague, clearly accustomed to such eccentricities. After a few moments, the corpulent wizard rose, visibly trembling with fatigue, yet sporting a wide, triumphant grin. I believe we've found a promising lead, Graxital, he declared, nodding to his ally. He then turned back to William, before looking towards Royal Wizard Imon and bowing slightly. It appears we will once again require your assistance, Imon. The elderly man gave a sharp nod, speaking for the first time, his voice raspy with age. It is my honor to aid in His Highness Telman's mission. A faint trace of reverence colored his tone as he uttered the name. Oblong returned his attention to William. Tomorrow morning, once I have sufficiently recovered, would you be so kind as to guide us to the location where you captured that ironhide wolf? The following morning, Dorian awoke with a yawn, a rare tranquility settling over him. He blinked, surveying the dim cave where he had spent the night. It was as uninviting as always, faintly illuminated by patches of phosphorescent moss. His broken space pouch lay discarded nearby. A faint smile touched his lips as he absorbed the scene, a sense of inner peace washing over him. His stomach, however, rumbled a loud protest, a stark reminder of his rapidly developing body. Osra, how much longer will I remain in this infantile state? He mentally inquired, his focus on his soul spell matrix. Approximately 6 more hours. Osra's cool, dispassionate voice echoed in his mind. Thereafter, you will be capable of evolving into a young adult Maya dragon, granting you the freedom to alternate between your salamander and draconic forms, or even merge them, though the latter may not guarantee a superior state. Dorian nodded, confirming this was the information he had anticipated based on his previous understanding. His stomach growled again. Stretching, he felt his muscles ripple as he rose. It was time to hunt. Dorian resided within the Nebra Mountains, a rugged range bordering the vast Thousand Oak Forest to the south. These mountains spanned dozens of miles, while the forest stretched for nearly 300, together forming immense, beast-infested territories. Dorian's initial emergence point had been approximately 20 miles from the Nebra Mountains, in an unassuming riverine clearing. A crude dirt crater, slowly yielding to encroaching grass and plant life, marred this otherwise picturesque spot. By the river's edge, a young green-scaled salamander, roughly 3/4 of a meter long, moved deliberately, its gaze fixed on the water. Its claws gleamed, poised to strike any unsuspecting fish. The river itself shimmered a brilliant, pearly blue, reflecting the morning sun. Just as the salamander prepared to spring, a blurred form materialized behind it, plunging a hand through its back, directly piercing its heart. A potent, ominous aura of blood emanated from the newcomer. The salamander died instantly, its crimson blood spattering the ground and briefly staining the stream pink. Still as unsubtle as ever, Brutus. A smooth, captivating voice resonated from a short distance as another figure shimmered into existence. This was a petite woman, seemingly human save for a very faint grey cast to her skin. Her face was a vision of beauty, perfectly sculpted lips, mesmerizing violet eyes, and a delicate nose complementing her graceful smile. Her long red hair drifted gently in the breeze, lending her an almost ethereal, fairy-like quality. She wore a form-fitting black leather ensemble that accentuated her curves. "It's my first time on this world, Gaia," the speaker Brutus retorted with a shrug, tossing the dead salamander aside. He was a powerfully built man, his bulging muscles barely contained by a loose black shirt and matching leather pants, standing approximately 2 meters tall. His short red hair framed a rugged yet undeniably handsome face. A strong jawline and near-perfect features were marred by 2 prominent red scars, forming an X pattern from each ear, across his cheeks and nose, and down to the sides of his neck. His skin shared the same subtle grey tint as Gaia's. "Blood magic, arise," Brutus commanded, clapping his hands. Several small golden rings on his fingers glinted and clinked softly. Immediately, the dead salamander's body spasmed. A glowing red light enveloped it as it slowly rose, turning to face the muscular man. Brutus met Gaia's gaze with a leering grin, revealing a set of impeccably white teeth. The only peculiar detail was the 2 pairs of pointed fangs, one set on top and one on bottom, that glinted softly within his mouth. "After you, milady." He bowed with an air of crude deference. Gaia rolled her eyes, a gesture made elegant by her beauty, and stepped forward. She casually waved a hand to her side. As if from nowhere, a long crimson staff with a glowing eyeball-shaped white crystal materialized, emitting a faint demonic resonance. Gaia held the staff before her, directing her focus towards the resurrected red salamander. "Blood magic, drawing fate," she intoned, her eyes closing in intense concentration. Faint red filaments began to lift from the salamander, slowly converging with the glowing crimson staff. Red symbols appeared in the air, then mysteriously dissolved. After a long moment, Gaia's eyes reopened. To the north, the disruption in fate lies to the north. Its echoes are weakening, however. In a few weeks, it will become untraceable. Her voice carried a hint of excitement. Brutus shrugged. "As long as we find it before the humans or shades do, High Lord Marcus won't be concerned. It's unfortunate none of the disturbances manifested in our own worlds. We were fortunate to be on a nearby connector planet." Brutus spoke High Lord Marcus's name with profound reverence. Gaia simply nodded, then casually waved her hand. Instantly, a pool of red blood coalesced, scarlet tendrils whipping and intertwining, forming a massive, 3-meter-tall wolf. "Salam," she whispered, gently caressing the blood wolf's flank, her eyes filled with tender affection and care. "Lead me to the one who disturbed fate." Dorian grinned broadly, surveying the fresh kill before him. This truly was his lucky day. After waking, he'd set out to hunt, his primary aim to simply pass the time until he could evolve into a more potent form. His current body, while swift, lacked considerable strength. Thus, his initial plan to sate his hunger involved catching fish from the river and then searching for magic herbs. However, upon emerging from his hidden cave, he discovered a small herd of mountain deer grazing by the river. Asra had informed him that most mountain deer were typically earth or mortal class. Even as a Maya wormling, such prey should be manageable, especially with his flame claws ability. Asra had also confirmed that all learned abilities would persist across his various physical forms, a valuable advantage he intended to exploit fully. Dorian began stalking the deer, stealthily ascending a tree on the valley's side. From there, he silently leaped from branch to branch, maintaining his focus on the animals below. He eventually reached one of the well-worn paths leading to the river, a route carved by countless beasts over time. He concealed himself on a tree branch, remaining utterly motionless as he observed. Mountain deer were large, but not exceptionally so, merely a bit bigger than earth-based deer, with tougher brown hides and robust black hooves. Eventually, the herd, having quenched their thirst, began to depart the valley. It was a sizable group, numbering around 20. Their route led them directly towards the path where Dorian lay hidden. He hadn't chosen this vantage point at random. Prior observation had taught him that these deer were skittish and creatures of habit. This particular path was not only relatively open, with minimal arboreal obstructions, but also the most frequently used route in the valley. As the deer passed beneath him, Dorian patiently waited, selecting his target, a large, meaty specimen at the rear of the pack. He'd briefly considered a weaker individual, but dismissed the idea. His current capabilities were more than sufficient for a deer of this size. 10 seconds ticked by until the chosen deer was directly below him. With swift precision, Dorian launched himself from the branch, activating his flame claws as he descended. He had practiced the ability so frequently that it now deployed instantaneously. His claws, glowing fiery red-white, plunged into the deer's flesh. A fraction of a second later, the herd scattered, seized by predatory terror. The distinct aroma of cooking meat began to waft through the air, sizzling. The deer Dorian had attacked convulsed, leaping into the air and struggling violently to dislodge him. Its powerful shoulders amplified its movements far beyond any ordinary earth deer, each desperate stomp exerting hundreds of pounds of pressure. Dorian, however, was relentless, driving his claws deeper until the deer's struggles visibly weakened. After a few more seconds, the deer collapsed, its body lying still as life departed. Dorian blinked, finally registering something new. The scent of cooked flesh from this body? It smelled utterly delicious. In his red salamander form, he hadn't cared about cooked meat. The rich, raw taste of blood had been a pure delight. Now, in this form. Dorian wasn't sure if his taste buds had undergone a transformation, but the aroma of the deer in front of him was truly mouth-watering. He frowned, examining his hands. The heat from his claws had been too intense. The flesh where they'd struck was charred black. If he intended to roast this deer properly, he would need to find a way to temper his claw fire or employ a different cooking method. As this thought formed, he glanced at a nearby tree, specifically noting a set of long, 2-inch thick branches, an idea beginning to spark in his mind. Space magic, blinking ship. Royal Wizard Iman's voice trembled with effort as he clapped his hands, channeling energy from his soul spell matrix to power the incantation. He executed a series of intricate, bewildering gestures, and a stream of luminous white symbols coalesced in the air. Moments later, the faint, shimmering outline of a small, white floating vessel took shape, emitting subtle vibrations that disturbed the air with mystifying, almost incomprehensible energy waves. William watched the transparent airborne craft with curious awe. They stood just outside your city, a metropolis approximately 3.5 miles wide, making it one of the largest settlements in the Western Obsidia River Empire. Its monumental 10-meter-high stone walls, reinforced by powerful enchantments, were a defining feature, a formidable bastion once serving as a frontier outpost against encroaching beasts. The Obsidia River Kingdom was still actively engaged in territorial expansion and conquest. Following their initial contact with the Nobel family, the de facto rulers of your city, the department wizards had spent the night within the Nobel compound. It was now the morning of the following day. William possessed a spell capable of creating a similar transport, but a mere glance at this floating vessel confirmed its vastly superior power compared to his own. Remarkable magic. the verbose fate wizard Oblong declared cheerfully as the ship began its descent, ready for boarding. "Let's be off." Oblong turned to William, his face alight with a satisfied grin. The fate wizard was thoroughly pleased with the outcome of his foretelling, having already dispatched a message to the fate wizard accompanying Lord Hadrian. If this expedition proved fruitful, it could be the breakthrough he needed to make a name for himself and secure the resources required to ascend to Grandmaster class. "Yes, sir," William affirmed, promptly stepping forward. Accompanying him were several Nobel family sky-class warriors, dispatched by the family head as his personal protectors. After the department wizards had retired for the night, the family head had drawn William aside, impressing upon him the importance of complete cooperation. A positive impression could potentially lead to enrollment in one of the prestigious department academies. After all, a wood magic department did exist. A family with even one wizard affiliated with any of the 108 departments was destined for a grandeur far exceeding mere provincial rule on a minor world like Hasnorth. William eagerly boarded, treading cautiously. His magical sensitivity allowed him to discern the ship's clear outline, yet its transparency remained disorienting. Behind him, Grandmaster Black Lightning Wizard Graxitl stepped aboard, followed by the Black Iron Guards the Obsidia River Empire had provided. These formidable warriors, members of the 5,000-strong Black Iron Battalion, represented some of the nation's most elite fighters. Oblong and Iman were the last to embark. Once they were settled, Space Wizard Iman raised his hands, fluttering them before him, then turned to William with an expectant gaze. "Now, young wizard, please chart our course." Dorian effortlessly snapped several stout, flexible branches from a medium-sized tree. He stripped them of stray leaves and tucked them under his arm, dragging them and the fallen deer to a spot by the river. He cast cautious glances around his surroundings. Though these mountains were renowned for their peril, he hadn't yet encountered any Grandmaster-class beasts within this specific valley, which appeared relatively secure. Should danger arise, he always had the King-class aura stored within his soul, a potent deterrent that would likely send any less intelligent beasts fleeing in terror. He decided it was high time he indulged himself. The emotional catharsis he'd experienced recently had left him feeling remarkably good, and with such a formidable safeguard, he could afford to relax. Setting down the branches and the deer, Dorian swiftly began to prepare a fire, clipping wood into smaller pieces and arranging them in a pyramid. He then drove 2 longer branches into the ground on opposing sides of the woodpile, positioning them about 5 feet above the nascent fire pit. He vocalized, studying the deer. "I think I'm supposed to gut it or something before cooking, right?" He scratched his forehead with a claw, attempting to recall. On Earth, he'd been an ordinary university student, well-versed in math and physics, even participating in a few campus dance clubs, but hardly the outdoorsy, camping type. He shrugged. "Whatever, I'm a dragon, it'll probably be fine." He selected another long branch, sharpening both ends to points and measuring it to span the distance between the 2 upright stakes. He then carefully pierced 2 high holes in the stakes, ensuring the horizontal branch would connect them securely. Finally, he turned back to the deer, licking his lips. Time to get cooking. With a soft gust of wind, the ethereal magical ship shimmered and dissolved into nothingness. William meticulously surveyed the mountainside where they had alighted. Their journey had been remarkably brief. The Space Wizard's craft possessed an unnaturally swift spatial translocation ability, effectively blinking across the sky. It also offered complete concealment, allowing passage through perilous territories. They had landed deep within the mountains, precisely near William's Ironhide wolf hunting grounds. Oblong explained that this strategic choice was due to the presence of several Grandmaster-class beasts lurking on the higher peaks, as well as his own readings via fate magic. A direct landing into the valley between the jagged summits, even with the protective space magic, risked detection and attack while still airborne. it was far safer to set down on the side of a less occupied mountain. While they possessed the capability to contend with Grandmaster-class beasts if necessary, avoiding such confrontations was preferable, especially since a disturbance might alert the very anomaly they sought. Oblong had refrained from elaborating on the nature of this anomaly to William, merely stating that they would recognize it when they saw it. It took only a few minutes to reach the valley where William had captured the ironhide wolf. Upon arrival, however, Oblong signaled a halt. The portly Fate Wizard sat down, thoughtfully stroking his chin, a look of intrigue on his face. Has anything historically significant transpired in this locale? He suddenly asked William. William was momentarily startled by the abruptness of the query. He pondered intently before formulating a reply. Legend claims a lone hunter discovered a great treasure here over 8 centuries ago. There's also a tale of a massive deluge of beasts erupting from these mountains after a blinding meteor strike, overwhelming and nearly annihilating your city's precursor. That's partly why your city has such formidable walls. Oblong listened with rapt attention, stroking his chin again. He turned to his companion. I don't like this, Graxital. There's an odd sensation here, a peculiar aura of death. The Black Lightning Wizard merely shrugged. He was actively scanning the vicinity, maintaining vigilance. The accompanying warriors had established a small perimeter, safeguarding them against unexpected threats. We can't turn back now. We'll simply have to press on, Graxital said coolly. Oblong struggled to his feet, his stout frame quivering slightly. Royal Wizard Aemon observed the scene dispassionately, a hint of disdain in his eyes. Yes, well, be that as it may be. Oblong began, gesturing with his hands. I still believe we should proceed cautiously and... Before he could complete his sentence, however, one of the master-class Black Iron Guards rushed forward, his helmet retracted to reveal a face etched with utter confusion. Ah, my lords. The guard's rough voice interrupted the wizards as he bowed, then snapped to attention. Yes, soldier? Oblong inquired, his tone reverting to its usual cheerfulness. We... found something, sir, the guard stammered. Found something? Well, what is it? Don't be so vague, man, Graxital interjected, his annoyance clear. I don't know how to describe it. You'll need to see for yourselves, sir. The man wiped a sheen of sweat from his forehead, gesturing behind him towards a faint wisp of smoke curling into the air. Gently, Saloom, Gaia murmured, tenderly caressing her blood wolf as it devoured the carcass before them. Her gaze was filled with affectionate devotion. A 3-meter-tall, blue-furred ape lay lifeless on the ground, its red blood flowing into the massive wolf, a peculiar crimson aura seeming to fuse the two beings into an unsettling, unholy tableau. They stood amidst the Nebra Mountains, quite near 2 strangely fractured peaks. An unsettling quality permeated this range, eliciting shivers from both her and Brutus. Something unnatural, something imbued with death, had transpired here. Blood magic, the foundational magic of their entire race, boasted immense diversity and myriad applications. Its branches were so numerous, it was often termed a virtually boundless form of magic. Even humans dabbled in blood magic, attempting to unravel its secrets, but their paltry skills were no match for true nobles like herself. It's merely a blood wolf. Brutus's crude voice intruded, shattering Gaia's serene appreciation of Salem. Gaia whirled, glaring at the hulking vampire, her eyes flashing daggers. Salem is a magnificent creature, far more than just a blood wolf. He is more deserving of affection than you, Brutus. Her expression became unhinged as she spoke, a perilous aura beginning to coalesce around her, small tendrils of red light shimmering around her arms and hands. Brutus grinned, observing her agitation. Fancy another spar, Gaia? He clapped his hands together, and instantly 2 blood-red gauntlets appeared, glinting fiercely in the mid-morning light. A furious expression crossed the female vampire's face as she fought to regain control of her temper. Slowly, she inhaled deeply, rolled her eyes, and turned back to Salem, a vexed look on her features. "We'll feast more later, Salem. For now, let's continue." She stroked the blood wolf once more. It slowly rose, moving away from the masterclass beast's corpse. She cast one final, withering glare at Brutus before following the wolf as it led them into the valley between the twin shattered peaks towards a solitary plume of smoke ascending skyward. Dorian beamed with satisfaction, cleaning his claws in the nearby river. Constructing a cooking spit had gone precisely as planned, and igniting the fire had been even simpler. He gazed back at the roasting deer, his mouth already watering. The crackling fat, the promise of warm, cooked meat on his tongue, the juices melting in his mouth. He could almost taste it. Pleased, his iridescent green scales shimmering in the sunlight, he performed a small, joyful dance around the fire. "I don't have any seasoning or sauce," he murmured, scratching his head. He scanned his surroundings briefly, but nothing resembling spices or condiments presented itself. Frankly, he had no idea what kind of plant might serve as seasoning. Were seasonings even plant-based? Parsley, he knew. But what about salt? He shrugged again, attributing his ignorance to a former life devoid of interest in cooking or chemistry. Had he known he'd be reborn into a magical new world, he would have prepared far more thoroughly. It wasn't as if he'd requested this. A sizzling sound jolted Dorian from his reverie. The deer on the wooden spit was roasting beautifully. He approached carefully, turning the carcass. "Should I have removed the skin?" he mused, resolving to experiment with that next time. As the meat continued to cook, he leaned back for a moment. He felt as though he were an adventurer in a cowboy western, living on the American frontier, cooking in the untamed wilderness, far from civilization. Though the Wild West wasn't typically populated by dragons, the image persisted in Dorian's mind. A melody from a song he'd heard recently on Earth surfaced, and he began to hum it softly, tapping a clawed foot to the rhythm. 100 meters away, the human contingent of mages and warriors stealthily advanced through the undergrowth. They soon reached a break in the trees, offering a view into the heart of the valley where the river flowed. Near the valley's center, the group discerned a small green dragon standing beside what appeared to be a large deer roasting over a fire. "Halt." Graxital fiercely whispered, his gaze fixed on the small dragon in utter confusion. William froze alongside him, his heart hammering. "Do you hear that?" Graxital held up a hand, gesturing towards his ears, then towards the valley floor. William strained to listen, catching a faint, peculiar sequence of sounds, emanating from the small green-scaled dragon. "Country Rudes, take me home, to the place I belong. You!" An odd yet melodious voice continued, echoing through the small valley, unmistakably originating from the tiny dragon before their eyes. "West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home." Oblong stared at the dragon, his eyes holding an unreadable expression, both hands extended as if in a gesture of profound bafflement. "Is it singing?" Gaia paused, head cocked, her gaze fixed on the peculiar, diminutive green dragon occupying the valley's heart. Her hand instinctively sought the comforting fur of her blood wolf, stroking his shoulder with a soft touch. She turned to eye Brutus, then Dorian, then back to Brutus, before settling once more on Dorian. That Gaia's statement was a question, laced with utter incredulity, her fingers still working soothingly through Salem's fur. "Is one of the beings who has twisted fate the cause of High Lord Marcus's hunting order? If the wolf led us here, that sounds like a safe guess." Brutus drawled, a bored expression on his face as he observed the strange little dragon. Even from their distance, he sensed its inherent weakness. He could crush it with a single blow, unless it concealed some hidden power. "Is it cooking a deer over a fire?" Gaia's voice was flat, almost devoid of emotion, yet her eyes held an unblinking intensity. "Seems so." Brutus grunted, utterly unconcerned. "And now it's singing?" Her eyes remained riveted on the tiny dragon. Dorian's voice, a quiet, joyful melody, drifted across the valley, an ode to his love for West Virginia. "Yep," Brutus confirmed, rubbing his chin. "And now, it's dancing." Gaia blinked, then glanced down, pinching herself. "Energetic little fella." Brutus shrugged. Gaia rounded on him, rolling her eyes in exasperation. "Would it kill you to show interest in anything?" Brutus flashed a grin, revealing the sharp, pointed white of his vampiric teeth. "I have many interests. What would you care to learn about?" He leaned in, a leering grin about to follow, but his expression abruptly hardened. His head snapped north, every trace of levity gone. Gaia froze, her own head swiveling to the opposite side of the valley, her eyes narrowing. "It's so tasty." Dorian performed a delighted little jig, his tiny dragon feet pitter-pattering around the fire. Everything, even the smallest things, felt infinitely richer since he'd shed his worries the other night. He was currently devouring an entire roast deer thigh, succulent and perfectly cooked, its juices melting on his tongue. The flavors exploded in his mouth as he bit, the fat sizzling. "It's so good." Tears of joy welled in his eyes. It had been an age since he'd tasted anything this sublime. Even as a red salamander, when his taste buds craved raw meat and delighted in blood, a mental barrier had limited his enjoyment. With a human mindset, he simply couldn't fully relish raw flesh and gore. But this deer thigh, it was cooked, juicy, delicious, the finest thing he'd eaten since arriving in this world. Dorian looked up at the sky, then back at the deer still on the spit, bowing slightly in a gesture of respect. It was then, however, that he detected the presence of several human figures approaching, instantly putting him on high alert. "Hey, little guy." Oblong gestured with open, non-threatening hands, keeping his voice soft. He'd observed the small green dragon and concluded it wasn't particularly powerful. Wizards were acutely sensitive to the strength of others, usually able to discern a more potent soul spell matrix. He'd also cast a quick fate cantrip for general information, which had returned baffling results. The dragon was either days or 20 to 25 years old. The spell couldn't decide. The curse of fate magic, he thought, shaking his head in exasperation. Such spells were notoriously difficult to unravel, especially with limited information. Still, the creature was undeniably odd, young, and its magic indicated a twisted fate. Their target. He waved gently again, signaling the guards to advance and encircle the dragon, preventing any escape. Graxitl watched the beast intently, his hands clasped behind his back, secretly gathering a small orb of black energy. Royal Wizard Aemon, meanwhile, remained at the rear of the group, observing with detached disinterest. He seemed to harbor a deep distrust of the creature's appearance, likely a product of extensive experience. "Just relax, we're only here to talk. Let's be friends." Oblong chattered on, focusing on his tone. No one here spoke Draconic, and while the Wormling's recent song wasn't Draconic, it certainly wasn't a language Oblong understood. The small green dragon froze, raising its half-eaten deer thigh to its mouth as it stared back at the approaching humans. Its body began to tremble, poised to bolt. "William," Oblong murmured, a brief sideways glance at the young wood magic wizard. William had proven adaptable and calm under pressure, a performance Oblong had been impressed with. Wood magic, after all, was truly versatile. William stepped forward, eyes locked on the small drake. A bead of sweat traced his temple as he concentrated, unwilling to falter. For some reason, the dragon seemed to be glaring reproachfully at him. "Wood magic. Seelie. Dutch out." Graxitl's normally quiet voice ripped through the valley, his sudden shout interrupting William. Crap. Dorian's mind split into full panic as he saw the approaching humans, freezing solid. He had no idea what to do. Should he run? He clutched the roasted deer thigh like a crude club. His heart hammered, and his body trembled with whatever the draconic equivalent of adrenaline felt like. In his current baby dragon form, he was no match for anything tough. Moreover, he recognized one of these humans, the same one who'd attacked him in his red salamander form, the one who'd used magic. He gave the man an extra venomous glare for good measure. "Hey, little guy." One of the humans, a very overweight man in loose blue robes with a clumsy attempt at a friendly smile, started speaking in Common, a language Dorian now understood. The man waved non-threateningly. Around him, however, several humans in black armor began to surround Dorian. "Just relax. We're just here to come talk. Let's be friends." Hammonite. Dorian rolled his eyes mentally at the man's words, despite the panic churning in his chest. "Sure you are, buddy," he thought, his gaze darting side to side. He felt an unsettling threat from the humans, his senses screaming that they were stronger. The closer the armored warriors and robed wizards came, the more intense that feeling grew. "Can I run?" Dorian's eyes flicked to the side, his body tensing. But the black armored warriors moved with a swiftness that belied their appearance, already cutting off most escape routes. By the time he could try to flee, they'd surely intercept him. His eyes glinted as he forced himself to calm, suppressing his fear to analyze the situation. It seemed he'd have to rely on the aura stored in his soul spell matrix. The wizard he'd seen before stepped forward. Wood magic, Seelie, light out, net. Just as Dorian was about to draw on his aura, a small explosion erupted, slamming into several of the surrounding warriors. The black-armored men to his right and left were hurled backward as a several-meter-wide eruption of blood appeared, blasting them away. Small shockwaves battered Dorian, stunning him as chaos abruptly unfolded. "Blood magic! It's some damned nobles! Look alive!" Graxatal roared, launching the ball of black lightning he'd been forming toward a point on the opposite side of the clearing. A pair of tall oak trees exploded into wooden shrapnel as his attack struck, creating a brief diversion. He immediately clapped his hands together, then raised them, incanting a spell. Black lightning magic. Black calling. Nearly 1,000 meters above, several lines of black energy rotated, slowly drawing clouds into an ominous vortex. A heavy, dark aura of energy shivered around Graxatal. Iman, the royal wizard, merely waved his hands, concentrating to conjure a transparent spatial barrier around himself. Casting spells silently was an exceedingly difficult feat, mastered only after years of practice focusing on a single spell. Oblong shot Iman an irritated side glance. Conjuring a spatial barrier solely for himself. It wasn't unexpected, as they weren't comrades, nor was it technically wrong. A wizard's personal safety was paramount, and even department wizards couldn't force others of equal or greater strength under Borel autarky law. But it still chafed him. Oblong grunted, holding his hands out. His long experience as a department wizard allowed him to maintain his calm. Fate magic, lucky guard. A green glow briefly enveloped him. Moments later, dozens of glowing red blood arrows shot forward, targeting the wizards at the base of the group, ignoring the wounded warriors. These arrows hurtled at breakneck speed, carrying deadly strength. Only a few blood arrows flew toward the royal wizard, none even scratching Iman's spatial barrier. Every arrow aimed at Oblong seemed to miraculously miss him, entirely by chance. The arrows that struck Graxatal shriveled on contact with his black aura, failing to harm him. William, however, bore the brunt. He was knocked several meters backward, slamming into a cluster of trees. Oblong cursed mentally, blaming his own poor planning. The difference between a master class and sky class wizard wasn't just energy concentration. At master class, a wizard's soul spell matrix transformed, granting an innate, constantly active barrier that only drew energy upon impact. Though inefficient compared to protective spells, this barrier was a vital safeguard against surprise or physical attacks. William, lacking such a barrier, wasn't experienced or strong enough to raise a potent protective spell in time. The bastard son of an important family looked down at his body as he crashed hard, feeling his ribs and legs fracture. 2 gaping holes, one in his lower chest, another on his hip, drilled through bone and flesh, yet not a trace of blood could be seen. His lips paled, overwhelmed by pain. With shaky hands, he twirled 2 fingers, stuttering. Wood magic, great elm's healing branches. Dougal shortly after, he collapsed, his body going into shock from the horrendous wounds, falling unconscious. Around him, small branches sprouted from the ground, beginning to cocoon his form. A moment later, 2 figures stepped into the clearing. One was an enormous, hulking brute of a man with crimson gauntlets. The other, a gorgeous woman in thin, revealing black leather armor. Both possessed faintly grey skin and were wreathed in an aura of blood. Damned nobles! Oblong swore aloud, holding his hands before him as he took charge. Aemon watched with continued dispassion, making no move to help. Oblong could even sense him preparing to flee with space magic. He cursed again, internally. "This is human territory. You have no right to be here. Leave immediately." Oblong threatened, buying time for Graxital's spell to charge. Vampire nobles, or just noblins, were contenders for dominance across the 30,000 worlds. While the Borel autarchy controlled over 10,000, the 3 vampire families held only 91. This wasn't due to weakness, far from it. Using the drain, let's many preference. Will neon to remem the really mine. The High Lords leading each vampire family could contend with the Mad Kin, no, the Wizard King Telmon. Oblong mentally corrected, carefully studying the 2 figures. Even if all 3 High Lords united, they couldn't defeat Telmon. He was an anomaly. Nobles abhorred change, typically staying in conquered worlds and ruling as they saw fit. Thus, the autarchy and noble families rarely clashed, not since the autarchy learned which worlds they controlled. Even the weakest vampire was equivalent to an Earth-class beast, far surpassing the weakest humans. The autarchy had greater problems. Draconic tribes, the Graal Alliance. Oblong shook off these stray thoughts, focusing on the nobles ready to react. They weren't here by chance. They must also be after the disturbance in fate. "Leave?" The woman's voice softly filled the valley air, tinged with glee. The massive brute stepped forward, a grin revealing his pointed teeth. "Why would we leave after finding such delightful food? Salem, come." She clapped her hands with a warm smile. Immediately, an enormous hulking blood wolf stomped into the valley proper. Oblong's eyes widened, and he cursed again. He swiftly began planning a withdrawal route in case Graxital failed. Lady Unwelly. The female noble was, at minimum, at the peak of the Grandmaster class to possess such an enormous blood wolf familiar. Vampires boasted incredible regenerative abilities, innate access to powerful blood magic far surpassing human blood wizards, and extreme physical endurance and strength. Oblong clenched his fists in rage, his eyes bloodshot, the fat on his body trembling. He'd come all this way, found the disturbance in fate, the small, weak green dragon, only to potentially lose it to a pair of accursed bloodsuckers. At that thought, Oblong shifted his eyes to the ground between him and the vampires, where the green dragon lay. No, not lying in fear, Oblong observed in that split second. Oddly, the dragon was leaning forward, chest puffed out, body trembling, as if preparing to yell. It was in that moment that every living being in the valley froze, every animal within 10 miles trembled violently. Master-class beasts on distant mountains collapsed outright. Grandmaster-class beasts, whether sleeping, battling, or resting, froze in terror, their eyes wide with horror. For at that moment an aura began to spread, an aura so devastatingly threatening that the very air seemed to shake. An awe-inspiring, majestic red haze descended and gathered upon the tiny green-scaled dragon, as if he were a mythical beast of legend. Wow, dare ignore this godly dragon! Outwardly, Dorian projected the image of a cool, confident, godly dragon, radiating an unsurpassed aura of simmering arrogance. His scales gleamed, the red haze of power accentuating his draconic nature. Internally, Dorian was freaking out. Back when he was human, dancing had been a favorite hobby. He'd performed with college dance teams, nothing serious, but thoroughly enjoyable. He'd also done a few high school plays and one college musical. Stage fright was terrible, but he'd thought he'd conquered it. Now, however, as Dorian forced an angry snarl, glaring furiously at the surrounding warriors and wizards, he realized that sentiment couldn't be more wrong. His body trembled against his will as he slowly turned his neck, glaring at each offending side. He could only pray they didn't notice. He wasn't even sure if his face looked angry. How was he supposed to know what a dragon's facial expressions looked like? His eyes glowed as he forced himself to focus, feeling on the verge of sickness. After the two sides began fighting, Dorian had immediately grasped his perilous situation. The sheer power and strength displayed by each side could easily kill him. A stray blast of that black lightning could incinerate him. Sneaking away safely was impossible, caught directly between them, and standing still doing nothing was a death wish. So he did the only thing he could think of. "Ozra, how do I activate the aura we stored?" he'd asked as the battle unfolded. "Simply will it to surround you from your soul, like a warm blanket covering you." Ozra's response had been concise, yet informative. Just as the genie in his soul spell matrix instructed, activating the aura was like drawing a blanket around himself. He mentally willed the small red bead in his soul to move, drawing upon it. As he did so, the bead visibly shrank, losing roughly a quarter of its mass. An incredible feeling of power and strength washed over him. He felt as if he viewed the world with absolute dominance, as if every being here was meant to live under his rule. The sensation was intoxicating, sweeping through his mind with abandon. Drawing inspiration from that feeling, Dorian began to act as he imagined a godly dragon would. Graxital saw his death. He stood absolutely still, not daring to twitch a muscle. His heart pounded, sounding like the footsteps of a colossal behemoth in his ears. His eyes were wide open, his full attention riveted on the tiny green dragon. The small dragon exuded an aura so incredibly mighty that Graxital knew a single movement would mean instant death. Its deep black eyes gleamed with unspeakable anger, staring directly into his soul. Even now, he could see the monstrous dragon shaking with rage, its aura pulsating. Its face was pulled into an unnatural, hideous snarl, grotesque and horrifying. The half-eaten deer thigh bone clutched in its claws seemed a sword of destruction, power pulsing around it. The beast was clearly beyond reason. It was a wonder he was still alive. Graxital was a tried and true magician, a wizard trained in the Black Lightning department for over 12 years. He'd reached Grandmaster class just last year and was considered one of the most experienced wizards in his age group, a distinction that secured his position under Lord Hadrian, the rising star of the Black Lightning department. His late father had always told him hard work brought results, but only if one worked for an honest man. And Lord Hadrian was gruff, forbearing, but most of all, honest. He'd only followed the man for a year, but had been profoundly impressed by his integrity and the care he showed, not only for himself, but for all the wizards and humans around him. His gruff, silent personality merely cloaked a truly great man. As his life flashed before his eyes, Graxital felt a sense of inner peace. He needed to warn Lord Hadrian. This vile, twisted dragon before him was a creature at least at the peak of Lord class, perhaps stronger. Even Lord Hadrian could be killed if caught by surprise. He could not let that man perish. And he was willing to die to ensure it. Far above, his black calling spell had completed, several enormous rotating clouds forming in the air. It was a powerful elemental gathering spell, harnessing the environment to bolster an attack. Unfortunately, an attack of this scale wouldn't even scratch the dragon before him. He knew it, not even bothering to try. He closed his eyes, then opened them, a calm smile gracing his face. Lightning magic, requiem above. He moved all at once, pouring every fiber of energy in his body into the spell. They could not depend on the beast's mercy. Even Aimon, the space wizard, was frozen in terror, unable to flee. Requiem above was a unique lightning magic spell, utilizing ambient energy to create a massive shockwave. Typically used to blast away numerous aerial attacks, it was an uncommon spell, studied by few in the Black Lightning department. He nodded and smiled as he slipped into unconsciousness, seeing the shockwave begin to expand 1,000 meters in the sky. The last thing he saw was that horrifying evil dragon glaring death at him, and his comrade Oblong, tears gleaming in his eyes, giving him a smile of acceptance for his sacrifice. Oblong stared at his idiotic companion, his face frozen in a smile of pure, unadulterated rage. He'd known Graxital was the quiet type when they partnered, but had been completely unaware of his apparently suicidal nature. "Are you trying to get us all killed?" His eyes were bloodshot, tears of frustration and fury welling up as he watched Graxital cast his spell and collapse. Oblong's arms trembled as he dashed forward, grabbing the fool's body. What a terribly unlucky day. Far above, an enormous shockwave began to spread, blasting apart the gathered clouds. A small explosion of black lightning shot into the air, crackling. Around the black lightning, white energy sparked, further fueling the expanding shockwave. Blasting off like an enormous signal beacon, Oblong finally understood his companion's intentions, cursing him internally. The idiot might be fine sacrificing himself, but Oblong certainly wasn't. The remnants of the shockwave slammed into them, shivering as it collided with Oblong's innate barrier. Relations a barrier to you lake a barrier to them. He forced himself to duck low, bowing before the green dragon. Several warriors nearby were stunned by the impact, a few even falling. "Our deepest apologies, your lordship," he stuttered, proud he hadn't stopped. Every word had to be forced from his shaking heart. The godly dragon merely stared, its eyes unfocused as if ignoring him. Then it blinked, its gaze piercing Oblong with the might of an ancient beast. "Be gone!" Its voice thundered, a single word laden with arrogance. Oblong trembled, the fat on his body jiggling as he swallowed hard, fighting unconsciousness. Several nearby guards had collapsed in terror. He bowed his head again, the awe-inducing aura making concentration difficult. Oblong jerked Graxital's unconscious body into the hands of a nearby warrior. All of them Black Iron guards and noble family soldiers alike stared at Oblong as if he were their only hope. He made another jerking motion. Quickly, the soldiers grabbed their wounded and injured, retreating from the valley. Royal Wizard Amon led the retreat, preparing a large-scale spatial magic to get them as far away as possible. Who are you to demand we do anything, Drake?" As they fled, Oblong vaguely heard one of the nobles call out to the dragon, her voice brimming with arrogance. He grinned cruelly. The idiot was asking for death. He smirked as he ran, pleased that at least the nobles would suffer more than them. As he fled, he couldn't shake the sinking sensation that he'd forgotten something. Dorian had frozen when he saw one of the wizards casting a spell, his heart plummeting, certain he'd been seen through. However, it seemed the wizard was only dispersing a cloud-gathering spell he'd cast earlier. A huge shockwave had resulted, stunning Dorian and nearly knocking his tiny dragon body unconscious. When he came to, finally clearing his eyes, he saw the worried, quivering gaze of the fat wizard. Dorian forced himself to continue his godly dragon act, filling his voice with as much arrogance as he could muster. He almost hiccuped as he made himself glare angrily, daring the humans to respond. His bluff seemed to work. He watched the group of human warriors and wizards begin to flee, grabbing their companions and scrambling from the valley. Just as they exited, however, Dorian was forcibly reminded of the other faction. Who are you to demand we do anything, Drake?" Gaia's voice boiled out, domineering and arrogant, her eyes piercing the small dragon with a keen gleam. "What the fuck are you doing?" Brutus signed in silent language, one of the two vampiric tongues. The powerful warrior was incredibly on edge, having retreated dozens of steps when the dragon unleashed its aura. His eyes tracked both the dragon and Gaia as he signed, ready to flee at a moment's notice. Its body is clearly heavily weakened. You see it as well as I. It must be a heavily injured beast, reduced to this state with only its aura remaining. No natural beast could possess that aura while being so young. Gaia signed back, her eyes flashing. Vampires had incredibly adept senses, far surpassing humans. Both Brutus and she could clearly tell the dragon was physically weak, only Earth class, unlike a truly powerful beast. Her words held a certain logic. Her heart, however, still thrummed with nervous fear. The aura before them was truly too incredible, if she was wrong. This is a 1 in 1,000,000 chance. Not, she continued, her hand trembling with both fear and excitement as she grit her teeth. If they could get the blood of a beast at least at the peak of Lord class for free. Beasts with bloodlines that could reach Lord class were rare and powerful. Those reaching King class were even rarer, and angelic class almost unheard of. Blood magic had many spells requiring the blood of external beings. A Lord class beast's bloodline would be immensely useful, something neither of them could hope to afford or gain in sufficient quantity. It would be the final push she needed, Gaia believed, to break past the Grandmaster class barrier. Gaia steeled her heart, ready to risk it all as she cast a spell. Blood magic, sweltering shade. Immediately, a dark aura of blood rose and spread into the air. Yodya offend this godly dragon. Gaia winced at the dragon's roar, fear spiking in her heart. Her spell continued to spread, plunging the valley into darkness. The dragon's stillness was the only thing reassuring her that her guess was accurate.
The thick darkness will affect this godly dragon! Foolish mortal, I was born in the darkness! Molded be it! You have merely adorned it!
The dragon waved the half-eaten deer thigh bone in its claws in a threatening, dismissive manner, regarding her with what seemed like supreme confidence as the light faded. Gaia's hands trembled as she stared at the green-scaled dragon, now visible only to her thanks to her spell. This dragon was the real deal. She wholeheartedly believed that if it hadn't been injured and weakened, it would utterly destroy them. Its origins seemed terrifying. Salam. Twatlam. Twat, she called out, twisting her fingers. Immediately, the powerful blood wolf appeared before her, its body shivering with power. Gaia studied 2 branches of blood magic, manipulating blood and blood beasts, and drawing fate. Salam was the blood beast she had raised for years, the cornerstone of her strength, her proudest creation. She had formed him from the bloodlines of several other powerful wolves, creating a massive beast of beauty and power. Swallow it whole. Tablon, her eyes shook as she focused on the small dragon through the darkness and the red haze of power, ordering her blood wolf forward. The wolf dashed without hesitation, instinctively obeying. Its powerful footsteps hammered the dirt, crashing down without pause. As it did so, both she and Brutus leaped backward, ready to flee instantly if anything went wrong. Brutus, in fact, retreated nearly 40 meters farther than she did, his fists clenched, glaring at her angrily. "Die, you bastard," she mentally whispered, watching her 3-meter-tall blood wolf slam into the small green dragon, praying it would be killed. Several bloodlines have been detected. Do you wish to absorb them? Several 100 meters underground, beneath the valley between shattered peaks, lay a small cave. Blocked off from the surface, it brimmed with an incredibly heavy aura of death, so potent it seeped into the earth itself, exuding the faintest trace to the mountains and valley above. The cave was small, only a couple dozen meters wide, and uniquely circular, like a large sphere carved from the ground. Datharovasien, Dathalaluvasi, Vilurindade, the Sigurulistadapand, into the cassidulated readurindulation or the downdivated, in to the beta debate tinsadethancy. Its walls were smooth, unlined by dust or cracks. The Oradorian Unleashed was full of might, but at its core, still a degraded version of the aura the fallen angelic class wizard had held in life. He had only managed to condense and store it, leveraging his unique soul spell matrix. Yet even this degraded version spread for miles on the surface, hundreds of meters into the sky, and deep into the ground below. And at that exact moment, the slightest hint of that aura reached this cave, deep underground. The moment it did, a small golden ball of light appeared at the cave's center. An old, aged voice spoke aloud, "My successor." When the pale, slightly grey-skinned woman started yelling back at Dorian, he knew he was in trouble. He played it cool, though, his success in driving away the humans bolstering his confidence. He could do this. The strength of the aura he emitted was slowly fading, he noted with alarm. The red haze around his body had thinned, almost imperceptibly. If this lasted much longer, he'd need to draw on it again, using up another quarter of one of his trump cards. Osra, can I use one of my absorptions on them? He still had 2 chances left to absorb almost anything with a bloodline. However, according to the God King's safeguards, he would immediately become whatever he absorbed, and if that being's flesh form was too strong for his soul to bear, he could collapse and perish. Osra had made this clear. These 2 appear to be vampire nobles, both in the Grandmaster class, judging by their physical appearance and intensity of blood aura. Your soul would be unable to bear the burden, Losha replied. Dorian blinked, a sinking feeling in his stomach. Blood magic, sweltering shade, the woman called out. Immediately, an odd type of red fog began to form, covering the sky. So be it, he thought, steeling himself. He'd made it this far, he would make it a bit farther. Yo, you dare offend this godly dragon? Dorian roared, puffing out his tiny dragon chest with all his might. His voice almost cracked on the last word, parched from all the yelling. The female vampire noble shuddered. It seemed his aura was still having an effect. All hope was not lost. Quick, he thought frantically. He needed to say something intimidating, something that would scare them off and make him sound like a majestic dragon of the heavens. As darkness swallowed the valley, inspiration struck. Woo! Think darkness will laugh at this godly dragon? Foolish mortal, I was born in the darkness. Molded be it!
You have merrily idotted it. His voice thundered as he waved his roast deer leg threateningly, quoting a movie character from Earth as he tried to sound menacing. He couldn't make out the vampires in the darkness, but he glared in their general direction. The crimson fog completely blocked all light, making it impossible for Dorian to see, even with his draconic vision. All of a sudden, he heard a loud thudding on the ground. A split second later, he felt more than saw something slam into him, then envelop him.
His entire body was instantly surrounded and chained down, unable to move. A heavy aura of blood began to suppress his mind, causing his consciousness to waver. His body felt crushed. No matter how he struggled or moved, he couldn't stop this feeling, some odd magic spell crashing upon him. Help and aid, he sighed, mentally exhausted. It's been a good run. Goodbye, cruel world. As the inevitability of death seemed to sink in, he felt tired and hopeless, a strange calm washing over him. Several bloodlines have been detected. Do you wish to absorb them? Azra's voice in his head was a cool oasis in a fiery desert of darkness. Yes, yes, fucking yes, he mentally screamed, his body barely holding on, desperately clinging to life. The strange calm vanished instantly, torn asunder. Absorbing detected bloodlines, bloodline origins, 29% Golem Wolf, 25% Black Mire Wolf, 24% White Rain Wolf, 15% Virulent Wolf, 5% True Vampire, 2% various undetermined bloodlines too small to currently measure. Immediately, a screen appeared in his mind, listing the bloodline origins of the beast that had attacked and enveloped him. He felt a rush as a large amount of energy was absorbed and stored in his soul spell matrix, awaiting his evolution. At the same time, the spell attacking him vanished entirely, the pressure weighing him down disappearing, and he heard a loud scream. RRRGH Salam no. Gaia felt a vile, horrible, tearing sensation in her soul as her innate connection with her blood beast Salam was severed. Agonizing pain ripped through her consciousness as she trembled in shock. A split second later, the beautiful vampire's eyes rolled back in her head, and she collapsed, unconscious. Damn. Tappan Brutus made a split-second decision. His years of experience had put him in many life-or-death situations, but this was unlike any other. Blood magic. Caesar's burn. Dahl. His body was racked with dark, crimson light as he cast one of the strongest spells he knew. Caesar's burn, created by a long-dead High Lord vampire, sacrificed 10 years of one's lifespan to temporarily boost strength to an enormous height. After casting, however, one would be incredibly weak for weeks and unable to cast magic for months. It was a spell only a vampire's abnormal regenerative prowess could manage. A human attempting it would instantly collapse from the strain. His heart pounded, knowing this was the greatest disaster he had ever faced. Any being that could casually destroy a Grandmaster-class blood beast could end his life with ease. Immediately, Brutus leaped forward, snatching Gaia. His body moved with blazing speed, a blur, each step leaving massive cracks in the rocky ground. He scooped her up, tossed her over his shoulder, and hurled himself to the south. He paid no attention to his body's condition, brutally pushing every fiber of his being. Several bones cracked as he drove himself to extremes, dashing away from the valley, covering over 1,000 meters in mere seconds. The only thought on his mind was the horror he, a proud vampiric warmage, felt at the sight of that terrifying beast. Dorian growled ferociously, maintaining his position as light gradually crept back into the valley with the fading bloody fog. A large pool of blood stained the ground near him. Several small holes and cracks decimated the valley, turning the once peaceful paradise into a cratered battleground. It seemed the attack that had tried to crush him had been made entirely of blood from several types of wolves. Any blood his body touched was blood he could absorb due to his unique soul spell matrix. Attacking him with a spell made of blood was like offering him a refreshing snack. He carefully looked left and right, his eyes alert. No one. A crackling noise caught his ears, and he spun around, teeth pulled into a snarl. Miraculously, the fire where he was roasting the deer was somehow still lit. The deer remained on the spit, part of it sizzling. The fight had seemed to last forever, yet in reality, it had only taken a few short minutes. Dorian slowly walked to the fire, putting it out. The deer was fully cooked, and any more time on the spit would likely burn it, though there was no chance he could eat anything right now. He set down his half-eaten deer thigh. The powerful red aura he had unleashed gradually began to fade, dissipating around him. He glanced at the deer before stalking to the river. He looked down at his reflection. His green scales were stained red, covered in dark blood, giving him a ferocious appearance. No fish could be seen in the river, all having fled due to his aura and the battle's impacts. Dorian jumped into the river, shaking off the blood. He then swam over to the small hole, hidden in the side of the river. He quickly entered the small, hidden cave, holding his breath as he swam all the way down to where he had found the dead, Wizard's empty spatial pouch and bones. The cave was the same as before, a long, damp room with a low ceiling, half filled with water. As soon as he was safely hidden inside the cave, Dorian collapsed to the ground, his body shaking haphazardly. Ha 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 ha. He began laughing uncontrollably, tears streaming down his face. The noises echoed in the underground cave, bouncing off the walls. His emotions exploded, a huge range of fear, horror, self-doubt, joy, and excitement mixing together. I'm alive. He spoke the words aloud, shaking as the tension and stress of the previous few minutes hit him. I'm alive. He laughed again, his tiny dragon claws clinking together as he air-pumped. Yes, yes, yes. He let loose, his emotions rioting. He began to dance around the cave, celebrating, his tiny dragon feet clinking on the hard stone floor. Fuck you, shitty vampires. Fuck you, shitty humans. He spun around, victorious, conveniently ignoring his past as a human. Did you think you could kill this godly dragon with your pathetic strength? Dorian was giddy with excitement, the fear of the moment washing off as he took joy in simply being alive. As he was in the midst of celebration, Ausra's cool voice cut through his mind. Your soul has sufficiently adapted. thanks in part to a spurt of growth over the past few minutes, evolving to Maya Dragon's second growth stage. The valley returned to a semblance of normalcy as both the humans and the vampire nobles fled. Animals and wildlife gradually reappeared. A calm breeze picked up, blowing through the valley, carrying away the stench of blood and destruction. As Dorian's body began to evolve, safely hidden within his cave, a small, glowing ball of light appeared in the valley, standing where Dorian had been just minutes ago. "Successor," an aged voice spoke aloud, emanating from the golden ball. Gradually, the transparent, ephemeral figure of an elderly man appeared. He was clad in a long white robe adorned with golden lace, an emblem of a sun emblazoned on its center, beams of light shooting forth. He had a kindly, tired face, a bald head, and a long white beard. His piercing red eyes scanned the valley, noting everything. The man appeared and turned to look directly at the underground Dorian, whose body was currently transforming. "No, you merely have a similar aura within you. Refined from a remnant of my own aura, it seems. How impressive." The aged voice sighed with disappointment. He could not bestow his inheritance upon someone who wasn't already a wizard, and while some dragons did study magic, the one before him clearly did not. The elderly man watched the small dragon's body transform with interest. It seemed to be growing from a wormling to a young adult dragon at a vastly accelerated pace. "It seems I am to perish today, as is my magic." Terrible. The old man rubbed his chin, a deep sadness in his eyes. His body was a collection of his remnant soul and soul spell matrix, formed after his death so many years ago. He had hidden in this valley for years, awaiting a successor from his kingdom, hoping they would find him and the hidden messages he sent out. He had gone to rest after some unknown period, deciding to awaken only when he felt an aura similar to his own. Unfortunately, his plans seemed to have failed. He sighed again, accepting his loss. His magic truly would perish today, the experiences and knowledge he'd gained fading into the dark. At that moment, a small groan caught the aged wizard's attention. Off to the side, next to a pair of cracked trees, lay a young wizard, deathly injured, covered by a collection of healing branches from a great elm. No, he corrected himself mentally. It was a magical recreation of the healing branches of a great elm, and a very skilled one. Despite this active healing magic, the young wizard's wounds were far too grievous. Death seemed unavoidable. Elder Mage Horrorville looked at the dying wizard, his eyes filled with pity. He could glean what had happened from the remnants of the situation: a great battle recently, traces of vampire noble blood aura, powerful vibrant lightning magic, and delicate strings of fate magic, all at master or grandmaster class. This young wizard studied wood magic, a versatile style, but was only sky class. He could faintly sense the wavelength of the injured man's soul and could tell he wasn't evil. Clearly, his companions had betrayed him or left him to die, casting him aside. "Just like myself," Horrorville muttered, his eyes gleaming with memories of his own death. Betrayed by trusted companions, bitterly left for dead after robbing him of his chance at ascension. His eyes gleamed sharply, his fists clenching. He looked down at the dying young man, making a decision. Why bother caring if this man was from his clan? His clan had yet to find him after all these years, and if he perished now, without passing on his inheritance, his magic and knowledge would leave this world forever, wasted. And the man's situation touched him deeply, at a core level. He would save this man and make him his successor. But for that to happen, he would need a favor. The old wizard turned his head to look underground, where a certain dragon was dancing in celebration of its newfound growth in strength. Enduenal Mia Dragon, growth stage. 2/4, Mia Young Adult. Enduethal growth progress, 1208/8620. New ability gained, a wave of transformation coursed through Dorian, his body stretched, wings unfurling and pulling taut, while his snout elongated, taking on a more pronounced, fearsome draconic cast. From his previous diminutive size, he ballooned to an impressive 3 meters in height, his length extending to a formidable 5 to 6 meters. His verdant scales shimmered, acquiring a mystical sheen that glowed even in the cave's meager light. His senses sharpened dramatically, vision piercing, hearing acutely powerful, and scent far more potent. The gentle murmur of the river, the crisp fragrance of the water, the subtle gleam of damp moss, everything around him snapped into vivid focus. Yet, this newfound grandeur came with an immediate drawback. He was now monstrously cramped, his massive form pressing against the low-hanging ceiling. Ow! Osra, can I be small again? He yelped mentally, for a moment disregarding the other system messages flashing through his mind. Osra's cool, measured reply echoed in his thoughts. Yes, your soul has fully adapted to this new form, allowing you to morph into any growth stage you have reached. Reverting to a lower growth stage is also possible, but demands a constant suppression of your growth, which will slowly drain your energy. How do I revert to a lower growth stage? He asked, urgency in his mental tone as he felt the rocky ceiling above groan under the immense pressure he exerted. A collapse? That wouldn't be good. Simply focus on your current stage and will yourself to revert. Your soul spell matrix will obey your commands. Dorian paused, then concentrated on shrinking, willing himself back to the first growth stage of his current form. An instant later, a flash in his eyes accompanied the sensation of his body contracting. In a blink, he returned to his familiar Maya wormling appearance. Whoo! He exhaled aloud, stretching his back. Glancing up, he spotted a network of fine cracks marring the ceiling. That doesn't look like a good sign. Tiled, he shrugged, then wisely scampered out of the underground dwelling, prioritizing safety. Once outside, he called up his soul status to assess his condition. Dorian's soul status, soul stage, masterclass, early health, perfect, energy, 94%, draining at 1% per 47 seconds. Maintaining that form really does drain a significant amount of energy, Finn mused, stroking his newly draconic chin. He ceased his mental command to remain in the first stage, and his body automatically expanded back to its now natural state, a 3-meter-tall Maya dragon. Hey, I reached the masterclass. Awesome. I jumped past Sky Class. Dragons are the best. He realized a moment later, performing a small celebratory jig. The distinction between classes was paramount in the 30,000 worlds. For beasts whose strength stemmed from their bloodlines, this difference was a matter of survival. The masterclass marked a critical threshold. A single masterclass beast could effortlessly overpower several Sky-class counterparts. For those who practiced magic, achieving masterclass in their understanding and application of magic would cause their soul to evolve an innate protective barrier for their physical form. For beasts born with powerful bloodlines, naturally ascending to masterclass manifested differently. Such beasts developed a certain level of intelligence beyond that of common animals, not always enough for full sentience, but sufficient to sense and interpret the auras of other creatures and formulate coherent responses. The soul of a master-class beast was significantly more robust than that of a sky-class beast. This inherent strength was precisely why all Master and Grandmaster-class beasts had either fled or concealed themselves upon sensing the aura Dorian had unconsciously released. But the most crucial distinction between a Master-class and a Sky-class beast lay in a subtler aspect: muscle and bone density. In the 30,000 worlds, a being's soul strength directly correlated with the power of the body it could inhabit and control. For wizards, this was evident in the awe-inspiring spells they could unleash. For bloodline beasts, it meant a progressively stronger physical body. Cellular structures condensed, growing tougher, denser, and increasing in number. The higher the class, the more pronounced this effect. An incredible reservoir of strength and power could be concentrated within a single physical form, all sustained by a potent soul spell matrix. This was a fundamental law of this unique universe. Warriors unable to wield magic followed a similar path to beasts, forcibly enhancing their bodies through relentless training and stimulation. While they might not reach the pinnacles attainable by certain powerful bloodlines, they could still achieve extraordinary physical prowess. Dorian flexed, feeling an unfamiliar surge of power coursing through him. He gazed at his several-inch-long claws, tapping them together. The resonant clang was formidable, almost menacing. A new, potent strength filled him, as if he could casually reduce an entire tree to splinters with a single blow. He had grown immeasurably stronger. His eyes then darted to the wings on his back, lighting up with interest. Instinctively, Dorian unfurled them, the sensation akin to having an additional pair of limbs. A cool breeze brushed over his expanding wings, which stretched several meters beyond his body's length. He frowned. As a former aerospace engineering student, he knew perfectly well that a wingspan of this size could never support his 3-meter-tall body in flight. "Osra, can Maya dragons fly?" he inquired. "A Maya dragon possesses one of the weaker draconic bloodlines and is incapable of sustained flight. Certain sen of Rionwanadshi increasing. Gliding and other forms of temporary aerial movement are possible," Jamsra responded impassively. Dorian shrugged, accepting the limitation, though his eyes gleamed at the thought of someday achieving a form that could truly soar. What human wouldn't dream of such a thing? As he processed his physical changes, he turned his attention to the final mental notification from his soul spell matrix. Ras new ability gained. Ability, Lesser Emerald Flames, 1/3. Description: an ability unique to several draconic breeds, granting the power to unleash potent green flames that burn with wild intensity, particularly effective in melting metal.